Good morning, good morning, good morning. Oh, hey there. Oh, damn. It is early. I've got something there for you, though. I got something for you, couch. Ready? Hello, fan. Look how chipper Fan is this morning. Oh, my. Hey, Trent. How you doing? Say hello to Fan. I'm a fan of Fan, and so is Couch. Good morning, Maggie. Mm. Let me get you all some well deserved libation. There you go. Have some coffee on me, everybody. It is early. We are getting ready for more Karen Reed out of Massachusetts. Same old courtroom. Judge Beverly Cannone. We got Hank Brennan for the prosecution. We probably got some more Alan Jackson for the defense. I have a feeling they're not done with that cross. I have a feeling we might be here all morning with poor retired Lieutenant Paul Gallagher. Well, he seemed to be holding his own yesterday, don't you think? They were pushing back. They were pushing back a little. It wasn't the best investigation. It's true. They gathered up the blood samples that were all over the snow in solo cups just to preserve what evidence they could in the middle of a snowstorm. A body was pretty much frozen there. I mean, there was only the blood that was under him, under his head. So, you know, as much as as much as Mr. Jackson's think that was a gotcha on Friday, I mean on yesterday on Monday, I think we're all going to find out that blood didn't even need to be tested. They didn't use any of those samples. I mean, pretty much they weren't looking for, you know, mass assailants. I'm sure that would have helped, you know, if they did, because it would have been contaminated and would have had all kinds of different people on there, and they could have said, "Well, this is mass assailant number 177 of 2008." But they can't. They can't because as retired Lieutenant Paul Gallagher he said, they made the best decisions they could at the time. They got a snowblower to try to blow some of the fresh snow off so that they could see kind of what happened, because the snow was still coming down and it had been for hours and hours and hours and hours while John O'Keefe lay there. They made the best decision they could at the time. Could they have driven back to the police station and got like CSI kits and did all this stuff? Yes. It really wouldn't have changed much. Okay? I mean, they used they used shop and stop garbage bags to hold up, what they could, like the shirt and the pieces of plastic they found and whatever else, did what they could. That still doesn't add up to conspiracy. Because I tell you what, if all of Canton Police Department, everyone from the fire department, everyone who lived in that neighborhood and was hanging out at that house, if all of these people, for some odd reason, are all conspiring against Karen Reed, because, Karen Reed's got it like that. They all want to put her in, right? They all want to just do her in. Just say they did. Don't you think they do a better job? Why would they leave themselves open to all of this ridicule? Seriously. I seriously think they had to be, after all, out of all these people that supposedly conspired together, there had to be some great mastermind in there somewhere who could have took everything by the reins and just got it to look a little bit better. You know, like seriously. It's just so ridiculous. I just can't even. All I've got to do is open this bag. The witness opens the cloth bag, and a storm springs up in the courtroom. The witness is blown far away from Karen Reed and her attorney on the witness stand. This is true. This is true. I can't help but be a little bit snarky about it. It does get to me. Well, I have been reading a lot on the socials about, and I actually this morning, believe it or not, and probably not, when I say what I'm going to say, I know you're not going to believe me much, but I actually feel a bit bad for Mr. Jackson this morning. Yes, I do. Because it seems like he's feeling the pressure. I do believe that he is a smart attorney. I do believe he can read the room. I do believe he knows he's losing this jury with these bulldog tactics of harassment and intimidation and yelling and carrying on and asking the same question over and over again, trying to pull out an answer he's never going to get. I think he sees the futility. I think he sees the tide. I know he can read the room. He is a very smart attorney. Well, his problem is rock in a hard place. He's got the Reed family jumping all over him because, let's face it, they hired him to be a killer, to tear up the witnesses. That's this whole witness intimidation campaign that's been going on for more than 2 years, 3 years. And they want him to go in for the kill. And all he keeps doing is swinging and missing because they're all ready for him. The element of surprise is gone. Everybody knows what he's going to do. Every day there's a comment on socials about Mr. Reed having a go at Alan Jackson in between testimonies. And we've seen the demeanor of his client. We know that his client goes up for every single sidebar now. She's not depending on her attorneys to tell her anything. There seems to be just a little bit from the outside looking in. It appears to be just a little bit of trust is gone. It seems like the Reeds feel they need to know what's best for themselves. Maybe it's a different opinion than what the attorneys think. Who knows? And I could just be making it all up, but that's what I hear. But I'm not making it up. I really think that he's getting it from both ends somehow because the man looks pretty haggard. I mean, yes, it's just a murder trial, and there's a lot of pressure when your client is facing a long time in jail in a very public trial, much to their own activities, very public. Okay, there's a lot of pressure there. A lot of pressure there. He's not in a good light with the court itself after being caught, not being very candid with the court when we directly asked about the ARCA witnesses and not letting anyone know that they paid them. And not being very respectful about the whole situation. And he's looking tired. And he's looking like his blood pressure is up. He's very red-faced a lot. And I just have to say, that beard just doesn't look good on him. He looks very unkempt. He looks like he just rolled out of bed. No matter what he does, it looks like he didn't do anything. So I think he needs to go back to clean shaving or something. But, hey, Maya. Morning. Oh, good morning. Okay. Nickel bet. Sidebar first. What do you think?
All right, so I was told counsel wanted to see me.
Here we go.
Okay.
Sidebar first. I mean, why should it be different than any other day, right? We open court with the now you see us, now you don't. That was just too perfect. It seems like Karen Maggie does, doesn't it? Like she tells the lawyers what to. Yeah, you know what? She does have her opinion about things. She really does. I think if you're paying them like that, you've got all these high-powered lawyers. You should listen to them, though. They know. Well, mm. Epic the musical reference, by the way. Yeah, I kind of got that. Rocket Couch, since you were watching it the other day. I kind of knew that's where you were going. Good morning. Uh, I wonder what this is about. Thank you for the boop there, Maya. A boop boop. Hmm. I can't believe they open. I mean, I can believe. I can't believe I'm supposed to say I can't believe because obviously they're going to open with another sidebar. I'm going to keep a sidebar record this one today, just for kicks. That's one for the opening. I never know what to do with the timestamps. Like she was there for a second. Do I say court started? They didn't start, really. I've just started like usual with the court opens with the sidebar. Let me see. Started but not started. It's like a hiccup, right? Like now you see them, now you don't. And they mute them. But I do see that, let's see, Paul O'Keefe is still sitting in the back in the second row, and Peg O'Keefe is there. I see Mr. and Mrs. Reed. There is someone else sitting in what we think is the AV chair there. Doesn't look like, what was his name? Chris? I think they kept calling him. Maybe he has a day off. We've got our law students up there in the back in the eaves there. Looks to it appears to be suitcases and all there. Wonder if Mr. Jackson is flying back and forth. Oh, was she there yesterday too, Maggie? I had not noticed. You see that? Like he had me like hitting my head yesterday, Mr. Jackson. I am not looking forward to another 2-day like cross like he did to Paul Jen McCabe, like relentlessly over and over. I do know we got a lot of pushback about going after the EMT again. And honestly, in regards to the Katie MacLaughlin cross examination, I do believe that actually helped the Commonwealth more than it did the defense because it just allowed her to bring up the harassment. He went at her about it. She got to say it started before her testimony, that everything was leaked about her before. She got to actually mention that. She remained composed, although it was apparent that she was bothered. But I give her a lot of credit. Took a lot of strength to come back. She's still dealing with harassment. But I will say that several of those inside the courtroom, as far as reporting, did note on the socials that whenever the witness intimidation and the harassment comes up, the jury takes copious notes. They start writing. They pay attention. They perk up. Okay, yesterday they went till for almost 20 minutes into my stream before they started. We're at 15 minutes and 45 seconds already. I'm betting they beat the record. Only because I'm ready here with my pen. If I put my pen down to jot down the time, they'll come back. So I have to scramble and find it. And you know how pens are. Like they just vanish. Like you put it down right in front of you and it's not there. I don't know where they go. I think they go to the same place that the other sock goes. You know, when you put two in the washer and only one comes out, two in the dryer, only one comes out. There's like, yeah, I think the pens go to the same place, wherever that place is that they're all hanging out. I bet you 10,000 OO bucks they don't beat the record. Okay. I'll take that 10,000 OO bit. I love to bet my OO a little bit, as long as it ain't in the millions. Yeah. This child got me so messed up, Maya. I missed a day of OO last week, like for the first time in like a year. It's not cool messing with my OO. But I'll bet you. Okay, we got 3 minutes left. If they come back before the 3 minutes, you win. If they come back after the 3 minutes, I am 10,000 OO richer to make up for the day I missed. I know, unacceptable. It is unacceptable. We should talk to Mr. Jackson about that. He should not be messing with my OO like that. I'm starting to sound like Douglas Adams. Starting to sound like Douglas Adams. All you need to do is come up with some quantum mathematical principle to explain lost socks and pins. I live in the world of Douglas Adams and Charlie Brooker. Oh my God, they're like two of my dream dinner dates. Yes, yes. The perfect man for me is one who can get along with Douglas Adams and Charlie Brooker at the same table. They'd be my perfect man. Yep. Oh, speaking of, I had to get up very early on my day off on Sunday, very early, because I'll be streaming at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time around now with Culture Cats. We're going to do episode 2 of Black Mirror. We're gonna do we're gonna do number 2 together on Sunday morning. We'll be talking about Charlie Brooker. And then that following Wednesday, Rocket Couch, you look forward to another chapter of Douglas Adams' life, the universe, and everything will be coming out. Which is that's going along nice and smoothly with all the contributions, all of you that contributed. I'm so grateful. Oh, we got 1 minute left, Maya, and I'm going to be 10K richer in OO. Are you sweating? Are you sweating there, Maya? Ooh. 45 seconds. We should bet every morning. This is pretty fun. It's like at least making me not so bad. It's not, just laughing. Oh, I found the pen. Okay. Hey, Sprocket Couch. Not only do I sound like Douglas Adams, my voice is going out. Like I sound like a bad episode of Black Mirror right now. My voice is going out. I found my pen. I bet you I find socks this morning too. Oh my, yeah, you owe me 10K. You know, well, I'll see you later over in the gambling room. Because it is now 20 minutes into the stream in 12 seconds. Looks like they're going to beat the record. Oh well. Corf, dang it. Better luck tomorrow. I'll bet you tomorrow. Oh, yeah. You could win it back. Double or nothing. It was rigged from the start. Yes. Like, hey, you know, the stars align for us Brooker and Adams fans, you know. This court is a sham. Yes, I would say. See, it proves the conspiracy The conspiracy is true. Karen Reed is innocent. Even Owo is ganging up on her. Don't even get me started. Oh my God. Whenever I start to think about the conspiracists around this whole trial, I just lose my mind. I'm serious. I just lose my mind. Oh, the coffee is good this morning, though. It's strong. I made the coffee strong. Oh, I'm going to get some throat spray, though. Because it's only Tuesday. If my throat sounds like this now, imagine what I'm going to sound like by Sunday. Ouch. Oh, boy. Man, the AV young lady, she looks bored. People in the galley look bored. Man. I know if I decide to do anything else, they're going to come right back. That's the thing. Well, you know what? I did something different last night. I didn't watch a single stream about this. I didn't watch a single lawyer. I didn't even contact any of my connections, like in the legal thing. A miss. Okay, that was 22:28. I'm going to mark it down for tomorrow, Maya. That's a smart pantsuit Karen Reed's reading today. I wearing today. I kind of like that pantsuit. Oh, wait, they moved Alessi back to the end again. Yesterday, they had him over there next to Yannetti. We are back at cross-examination with Alan Jackson. I do believe it'll be retired Lieutenant Paul Gallagher still. It's hard to read their faces. They don't look pleased, but they don't look upset either. Nothing from the bench. She hasn't said a word. I guess they're bringing the jury in. You wired the monies? Okay. Thank you. I appreciate you being so prompt about it, Maya. A gentleman in a scholar you are. My heart goes for this woman. Every day she's here having to listen to this for the second time. Awesome, Maya. I hear you, Maggie. How about just miserable looking? Well, they do look tired, but don't we all? This has got to be very wearing on everyone.
All right, so the court, please. Jurors entering.
The jury's coming in. Hello, Fan. Good to see you again. Nice to see that, like, you're doing so well this morning. Does the Fan look extra chipper this morning or what? Rocket Couch, what do you think? I think there's a little pep in the Fan today. It was looking a little waney on a Monday yesterday. I thought it was lacking a bit. Honor among waffles, always, always. Oh, where are they taking us? Oh.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye.
To
All
the
persons
other
having anything
fan.
to do before the Honorable Beverly Cannone, the Justice of the Superior Court, holding in Dedham within and for the County of Norfolk. Draw near, give your attendance, and you shall be heard. This court is in session. Please be seated.
Good morning again, counsel. Good morning, Ms. Reed. Good morning, jurors.
Good morning.
Thank you for your patience this morning. We were able to get some work done that will help facilitate things and make everything go a little more smooth. So we appreciate do have to ask you those questions. Was everyone able to follow my instructions and refrain from discussing this case with anyone since we left yesterday?
Yes.
Everyone said yes or nodded affirmatively. Were you also able to follow the instructions and refrain from doing any independent research or investigation into this case?
Yes.
Everyone said yes or nodded affirmatively. Did anyone happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case since we left yesterday? No. Everyone said no or shook their heads. Thank you. Can we have Lieutenant Gallagher again, please?
Okay. I wonder if that facilitation has anything to do to speed up the questioning on the defense's side, like actually get to an issue.
Sir, I'll remind you, you're still under oath. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Gallagher.
All right, Mr. Jackson, whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Your Honor. Thank you. Mr. Gallagher, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us again. I want to ask you a quick question about what we talked about yesterday concerning your search at the scene. If we could go back to that, when you engaged the leaf blower. During the time that you were removing materials in and around the area of the flagpole going out to the, I think you called it the berm, B-E-R-M, the berm, the curb.
Yes, that was at the street. There was a 6-inch Cape Cod berm. Yes.
Okay, and that led straight to the asphalt of the street, correct?
It's basically a curbing. It's
Okay.
where the property line, the grass, the lawn meets the street.
And you were searching the area where you believed Mr. O'Keefe's body to have been found, all the way out toward that curb or berm area, correct?
Yeah, we did not go out to the berm. We did about approximately 6x6, 7x7, about 50 square feet.
50
area.
square feet. Okay, fair enough. But you did say at some point, I think on direct examination, you said that you exposed the berm
Yes.
just to give you some orientation as to where the curb was, where the street was.
And if it was possible, he may have tripped and fallen. Yes.
Okay. You did not recover or see a hat, a man's hat,
No, sir.
black
No.
in color, like baseball style hat.
No hat. No, sir.
You did not see or recover a man's shoe.
No, sir.
And you said you searched for the area in that 50 square foot area by removing materials, getting down to moving the snow, getting down to all the way down to the lawn.
Yes.
Okay. You did not see a single piece of bright red plastic taillight material either, did you?
No, sir. Not in that area.
As a matter of fact, you didn't see 46 pieces of taillight material, either clear or bright red plastic, in any part of the area that you searched.
No, the only thing we discovered was the blood sampling in the glass. That is correct.
Speaking of the glass, that's a good segue. You found that piece of broken drinking glass that you brought in and showed the jurors yesterday, correct?
That's correct.
Did you search the house at all to determine whether or not there was any matching glass in the home?
No, I did not.
You testified yesterday that you looked around when you were in the house. This is the second time you're at the location. So you went back with Sergeant Lank. I want to orient you to that time. That's when you actually entered the home for the first time of Brian Albert. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
And you indicated that you did look around the family room, the kitchen, and you didn't see any signs of a struggle or anything like that.
No, sir.
I asked you that exact question about a year ago at another proceeding. Do you recall that colloquy between the two of us?
Yes.
And at that time, I asked you, did you look around the house for any sign of a struggle or a fight? And your answer was no. Do you remember that?
Yes, I think that's out of context. I understood that question was, did I wander the house to look for any sign of a struggle? I believe you asked me if I went to asked me about a bulkhead and things of that nature.
Okay.
As I stood there, I have observations I can see.
Right.
So I think it's just a miscommunication on what type of search.
Fair
or
enough.
What type of observation.
Fair enough. Let's clear that up right now then, Ms. Gallagher. With regard to your the time that you were inside the residence, you did not seek to or ask permission to look around any place other than where you happen to be standing, which is right inside that front door of the family room, sort of adjacent to the kitchen area, correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
You didn't walk into any adjacent rooms?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. You didn't walk into any, you didn't search the kitchen area?
I did not, no, sir.
You didn't look through the cabinets or anything like that?
Absolutely not, no.
You didn't look at the glassware?
Absolutely not, no.
You didn't go down to the basement? We talked about that previously.
Correct.
And-
No, absolutely not.
Okay. You didn't go out to the garage?
No, sir, no.
You didn't look around the garage?
No.
Other than walking in and basically where you just described, standing while Sergeant Lank was engaged with Miss McCabe, you didn't do anything to search the interior of that house for anything?
No, I wasn't there to search at all.
Okay. You also didn't, subsequent to that, you didn't seek or receive a search warrant?
No, I did not.
Okay. You didn't believe that it was necessary, in your mind, it was necessary to seek a search warrant to search the interior of that house?
That's absolutely correct.
You were aware at the time that you did go into the house that Sergeant Lank had earlier reported at least the possibility that John O'Keefe may have gotten into a fight, correct?
I don't recall that. We went over options on how he could have come to where he was, and an altercation certainly was one of them.
Okay, so that's fair enough. So an altercation meaning was one of the, when you say altercation, that means a physical fight, correct?
Sure.
So that was a possibility in your mind.
Everything was a possibility at that time.
And at that time, you had the information that you found, or Mr. O'Keefe's body was found on the lawn of a residence where there was alcohol, drinking, a party of some sort, or a gathering of some sort, just hours early, correct?
That's correct, but the house had nothing to do with the incident.
At least to your mind.
That's correct, based on the evidence, yes, at that time.
And the evidence at that time was simply your communications with some, but not all, the occupants of the house, including Jennifer McCabe, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
You didn't separate any of the witnesses that were, or any of the occupants that you saw inside the house, or you came across inside the house, for instance, by taking them to the station, putting them in separate rooms so that they couldn't coordinate testimony, things of that nature?
At that time,
At that time.
so Detective Sergeant Lank was there to speak with Jennifer McCabe only.
Okay. But there were others in the house.
There were others in the house, yes.
I'm just trying to figure out whether or not you took the added step of separating those witnesses, asking those witnesses potentially to join you down at the station, putting them in separate rooms, separating those witnesses. You did not do that.
Not at that time, no.
Okay. At any time, did you?
No, we shortly thereafter, we were removed from the investigation. We removed ourselves from the investigation.
And before you were removed from the investigation, you just left the house after the conversation that Sergeant Lank had with Jennifer McCabe, correct?
Yes, after he took Jennifer McCabe's statement, we left the house, yes.
Is the reason that you didn't seek a search warrant or separate the witnesses or ask any of the potential witnesses to join you down at the station, did that have anything to do with your knowledge that the homeowner was a police officer?
Absolutely none. I've actually executed warrants on police officers' houses in the past, including police officers I personally worked with and had to charge some of their children. So that absolutely would not factor into a reason.
And it didn't factor in this case?
Absolutely, absolutely not.
That's my question. It did factor into your decision-making that Brian Albert was a police officer?
Absolutely not.
He didn't get any special treatment because of that?
Not by me, absolutely not.
Okay, not by you?
Not.
Okay.
I can only speak to my personal knowledge.
You were aware that, and you indicated yesterday, that the reason that Canton PD was removed from the investigation, or at least the interview section of the investigation, was because of a relationship of one of your detectives. You indicated your best detective, Kevin Albert, correct?
That's correct.
Or you gave Mr. Albert, or Detective Albert, very high praise.
He's a very good detective, yes.
And you were his direct supervisor.
I was at one point, yes.
Okay. You're aware that Kevin Albert was disciplined by the Canton Police Department for an incident occurring in July 2022, correct?
I am, yes.
Do you stand by your testimony knowing that Kevin Albert is your best detective, or was your best detective?
He's an excellent detective, yes.
You indicated that you contacted your deputy chief, Deputy Chief Gallagher, and ultimately secured some solo cups from Deputy Chief Gallagher across the street, correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
You were aware at the time that Deputy Chief Gallagher's house was adorned with a Ring video camera just over the front door, facing out toward the street and facing across the street, which would be facing 34 Fairview, correct?
That is incorrect. He does not have a Ring camera. I know that his system is an Arlo camera, and I have personal knowledge of that because we've discussed cameras because we bought them approximately the same time.
My mistake. Arlo camera, ARLO.
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, that's still, although it's a different brand, it's still a home personal surveillance camera, correct?
Yes, but
And you're aware that those are motion activated cameras designed for security to capture images of things that may be going on outside the home.
that is correct. Yes, sir.
May I approach, Your Honor,
Yes.
briefly?
Thank you.
Mr. Gallagher, would you take a look at that photograph that I just handed you?
Yes.
What's it marked for ID?
It is marked for ID, and Mr. Gallagher, if you could read that for me, so it'd save me a trip up to the stand.
I believe it's a 5, Exhibit 5.
Could it be an S?
It could be an S, yes.
I think it's S, Your Honor.
I apologize.
Let me, it is S, okay, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
I recognize the camera and the door.
Okay. Is that a shot of Deputy Chief Gallagher's, sorry.
That's okay. I know what you're asking.
Is this a shot of Deputy Chief Gallagher's front porch?
It appears to be.
Okay. Does that front porch face 34 Fairview?
We need a time frame.
I'm sorry, Your Honor?
We need a time frame.
Sure. Did you see that Arlo camera so situated when you went over there on January 29th, 2022?
I knew it was there, yes.
Okay. And is that a fair representation of what the camera looked like and its positioning, basically its positioning in January of 2022?
Yes.
Okay. Did you seek the footage? From that
No, I
camera?
didn't. I know what that camera captures.
Okay. Your Honor, with the court's permission, when we publish, actually, I'd like to mark this as evidence next in order.
Okay.
I may approach.
Yes.
53.
May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher, do you recognize this as being the photograph that you just saw, Exhibit 53?
That is correct.
Okay. I'm going to draw your attention. And by the way, there's one amendment to this photograph. There's a redaction of the address. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to draw your attention to that area right there, which I'm
Yes.
highlighting.
Yes.
What is that?
That is the Arlo camera.
Can you orient the jurors for us, please, to what we're looking at in this photograph?
You're looking at a camera that's angled downward.
And is it the front porch of that residence directly across the street from 34 Fairview?
It is not directly across from 34. It's actually more directly across from 32, so that would be incorrect.
Okay. Is it across the street from 34 generally?
It is, if Lieutenant Kelleher's house is here, 34 is over here across the street.
Okay. Is there a view from that front porch, just generally as you're standing there, if you were to turn 180 degrees and put your back to the door, is there a view of 34 Fairview as well as 32 Fairview?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Okay. Did you seek and we can take this down. Did you seek to secure any footage from that Arlo camera
I did not.
from Deputy Chief Gallagher?
I did not.
Did you talk to Deputy Chief Gallagher about that footage?
I don't remember specifically.
Did you ask him whether or not he had reviewed the footage for a determination whether or not it caught any of the incident that may have occurred at or around 34 Fairview on January 29th, the early morning hours of January 29th?
I don't know if I did. I know it would not have.
How do you know it would not have?
because I know what that camera captures.
How do you know what that camera captures?
Because I've picked up packages for Deputy Chief Gallagher in the past. I know it captures his doorstep and a portion of the front lawn.
So you've reviewed the Arlo footage from his
No.
iPhone?
He's just sent me a picture. Can I pick up when he's been on vacation, can I pick up a package on the front step?
Okay, so
Yes, I've seen it.
so you've seen screenshots that
Sure.
Deputy Chief Gallagher sent you, correct?
I believe so, yes.
But you've never looked at the actual application to see what it might encapsulate or what it might capture generally.
We've compared what we have our cameras set up as. We had communicated about security at our houses multiple times. I know it captured the front door and a portion of the front lawn.
Do you believe that it would have been best practices to go ahead and secure that footage so we don't have to take anybody's word for it? We could actually look at the footage ourselves.
I didn't do that.
Do you think that would have been best practices to do that, just to have belt and suspenders? So there's no question about whether or not that camera that's facing, at least it's facing directly across the street, might have captured something of interest on the morning of January 29th, 2022.
To me, there was no expectation that it had captured anything. So I didn't think it was practical.
So because of your expectation, you didn't seek the footage and you didn't secure the footage.
Because of my knowledge and expectation, yes.
And you now know that that footage is gone. It's overwritten.
I would assume so. I'm not familiar with how long Arlo keeps footage.
So you are familiar enough that you decided that it wasn't important to capture the footage, but you're not familiar enough to know whether or not the footage is actually saved onto the Arlo system?
I don't know anything about, I don't have Arlo cameras. So I don't know anything about
So
the
you don't,
system, but
okay.
I have Blink. So we've compared our systems. So I'm not really sure what you're asking.
So you don't have an Arlo system.
I have Blink, correct.
You're not familiar with how Arlo works, correct?
Correct.
You're not familiar with the total array of where the cameras might capture versus what might be captured on your phone app, or that you can say, like, push a button that says packages or people, and it narrows the focus of the camera. You're not aware of that?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Okay. But you would have been aware of that if you had captured the footage and simply said to Deputy Chief Gallagher, I'd like that Ring footage for that 24-hour period.
Okay, it's not Ring. And
I'm sorry, that Arlo footage for a 24-hour period.
Sure.
Well, let me ask you this. Did Deputy Chief Gallagher get any special treatment from you because he's a police officer?
No,
Did Deputy Chief Gallagher get any special treatment from you because he was your boss?
no, absolutely not.
Okay. You know Brian Higgins.
I do.
How do you know him?
Brian Higgins is a special agent with the ATF.
How long have you known him?
I first became aware of Brian Higgins probably around 2016, 2017, when I was with the DEA and we were working a Title III investigation, which is a wiretap investigation into gang activity, drug distribution in the Boston, Brockton area. I never had any personal contact with him at that time. He was just an agent in the group I was working for.
Ultimately, did that professional relationship seep into more of a personal relationship as well?
It did. So I think it was 2018 or 2019, the ATF had a satellite office at Canton PD, and he was one of the special agents that was assigned, yes.
So he actually officed in the brick and mortar location of Canton PD.
Yes, he did.
And did he maintain that office all the way through January of 2022?
He did, yes.
And during the course of your interaction with Mr. Higgins, did you become friendly with Mr. Higgins?
I've become friendly with Mr. Higgins, yes. Most of my coworkers I'm friendly with.
Is it safe to say that you socialized at times with Mr. Higgins?
I have, yes.
Okay. You've shared cocktails with Mr. Higgins?
Yes.
Shared meals with Mr. Higgins?
Yes,
Okay. So it is safe to say that you have both a professional and a personal relationship with Mr. Higgins,
yes, I do.
and you consider him a good friend.
Yes, I do.
You were aware, Mr. Gallagher, that he was at 34 Fairview on January 29th, those early morning hours, during the course of the time when John O'Keefe went to 34 Fairview.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that
Sure.
question?
You're aware that Mr. Higgins was at 34 Fairview in the home at the time that John O'Keefe went to 34 Fairview on January 29th, 2022.
By the time I became aware of it was afterwards, yes.
Okay. That's what I mean.
Yes,
I know
yes.
you weren't aware of it at the moment, but
Right, okay.
you became aware of it.
Later on, yes.
Okay. When did you become aware of it?
I'm not sure. It was after we were, I'm not really sure.
It was during the time that you were dispatched over to Brian Albert's house to ultimately either begin the investigation or go into the home with Sergeant Lank and interview with people there, correct?
No, that wasn't the time, no.
Didn't you say in a report to Lieutenant Tully that when you went over to Brian Albert's house, that Brian Higgins was not there?
I don't recall Brian Higgins being there.
Right. So what I'm trying to register is whether or not you knew at the time that you went to Brian Albert's house, at least that second time, that you might or might not have expected to see Brian Higgins there because you knew he was at the home when John O'Keefe arrived there the night before.
Can you rephrase that question? I'm not following you.
Sure. When you went back to, in other words, during the time that you were investigating and joining Sergeant Lank
Yes.
back over at Brian Albert's house, you knew that Brian Higgins had been somehow in that home the night before.
I don't believe I did at that time.
When do you think you learned that?
At sometime afterwards, probably when I saw the list and reviewed the narratives of the officers.
Would that have been days or weeks later?
No, it probably would have been, within 24 hours or so.
Okay, within 24 hours of your involvement.
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
that's what I was trying to get to.
Okay,
Thank
I
you for that.
apologize.
My bad.
No.
Bad questioning on my part. So within 24 hours of your involvement, which would have been, your involvement was the early morning hours of January 29th.
That's correct.
Correct? Within 24 hours of that, you knew Brian Higgins was somehow tangentially involved or collaterally involved as a potential witness, if nothing else.
I'm not sure he was a witness to anything. I was aware that he attended the house at 34 Fairview after they left the bar.
Right. And you said, well, I'm not sure he was a witness to anything. The one way to figure out whether or not someone is a witness to anything is to actually formally interview them, correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Which you did not do.
We were removed from the investigation before I found out Brian Higgins was involved.
Okay, so you were
So
removed.
I wouldn't be interviewing him.
You were removed, and then it was within a few hours of that you realized that Brian Higgins was somehow involved.
Not a few hours. No, I said it was within 24 hours probably.
Okay. You're aware that Mr. Higgins not only had a office at Canton PD, he also had a key card for Canton PD.
Yes, he did.
Explain for the jurors what a key card or an access card at Canton PD means. What is that? What is a key card for Canton PD?
So it's a secure building. I think we've all seen it. You have the square boxes with the red light. The key card allows you access into the building. And depending upon your rank, you have different rights. Each individual has different rights to enter different areas.
You had, for instance, being a top level Canton lieutenant, you had a key card that was probably the functional equivalent of a master key card. You could get in pretty much any place you wanted.
Absolutely not.
Okay, where could you go?
It's easier if I say where I can't go.
That probably is easier.
Would that
Yeah.
be where?
Explain that.
So I can't go to the armory, which is where weapons are kept and ammunition is kept, and I can't go into permanent evidence.
Okay. You're aware that Brian Higgins had a key card,
Yes, I am.
and that access card gave him access to pretty much, with the exception of the armory, possibly the evidence room, and what was the other location?
I think that's what I said, the evidence room
Okay.
and the armory.
With the exception of those, you're aware that Brian Higgins' key card gave him access basically to the entirety of the Canton Police Department?
Well, so I want to specify, I don't specifically know what Brian Higgins had rights to, but there are also parts of our department that are secured by key locks that he wouldn't have access to, and I don't have access to as well, offices and things of that nature.
I want to focus your attention on the Sally Port, if I
Okay.
could. You can enter the Sally Port, which is a fancy name for a garage, correct?
It certainly is, yes.
Okay. You can enter that from the outside, meaning out in the elements. You come from a parking lot adjacent to or that services the Sally Port. You can enter from there, correct?
Yes, there's one pedestrian door on the main entrance side. It's for location purposes. It's right beside the garage door that's marked number 4.
And the garage door is one of those big roll-up, industrial-style roll-up doors that comes up and down?
That is correct.
And then you can also enter the Sally Port from inside Canton PD, correct?
There are 2 locations you can enter the Sally Port from inside, yes.
And Brian Higgins' key card gave him access to both of those locations, the pedestrian portal going into the Sally Port from outside, as well as the pedestrian portal from inside Canton PD.
That would be correct.
Okay. Speaking of the Sally Port, you were, if not the person, one of the people who let Massachusetts State Police into the Sally Port on February 1st, 2022 to process the black SUV, correct? The Lexus.
I'm not sure if I was the one that gave them access, but like I said, I've testified to. I certainly would have.
Okay. That SUV had actually arrived on January 29th, 2022, 3 days earlier. Is that right?
I believe so, sometime after 5 or 6. I'm
So
not
it
sure of
was
the time.
in the Sally Port from January 29th all the way to February 1st, at least to your knowledge, for 3 full days in the Sally Port, correct?
2.5 to 3, yes.
Okay. From the time it arrived at Canton PD until it was processed out and moved out of the Sally Port, how many people would have had physical access to that SUV?
Everybody that possessed a key card.
And that's basically everybody at Canton PD that is a sworn officer, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Maybe even some civilians, correct?
I'm not sure of civilians. What civilian?
But do y'all have non-sworn civilians that
We don't.
share things?
No, we do not. Well, we do, but I'm not sure whether they would have access, what their access is.
So at least the entirety of the police department, the sworn police department, correct?
The uniformed police, yes.
As well as Brian Higgins, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you. Oh, by the way, can I go back to something?
Sure.
When you were at 34 Fairview, when you walked in with Sergeant Lank, you walked in through the side door or the main door?
Side door.
Side door into the family room, correct?
I believe it's a family room, yes.
Walked into the kitchen, correct?
I was by the kitchen.
Adjacent to the
Yep.
kitchen. Did you see a dog?
I did not.
Speaking of the Sally Port, I want to move back to the Sally Port. I apologize about bouncing around a little bit.
Perfectly fine.
Moving back to the Sally Port, you indicated that basically all the uniformed officers, every single uniformed officer at Canton PD would have had access to that Sally Port, as well as Brian Higgins. They also would have had access to everything inside the Sally Port, whatever was left there.
Yes,
The SUV and other stuff, for lack of a better technical phrase, correct?
yes.
Okay. Did you photograph or did you cause to be photographed the SUV when it arrived on January 29th in your Sally Port?
We had been recused at that point, and I wasn't working when the vehicle arrived. So
I thought you said that you were recused only from doing interviews.
from doing investigative interviews, but I wasn't present when, I wasn't working when the vehicle came in.
Okay. So you could have taken photographs of the vehicle had you wanted to, or caused someone to do that had you wanted to.
I had no idea that vehicle was coming to Canton PD, sir.
Okay. Once you got to, as the lieutenant in charge at the scene, was it important to you to know that a seminal piece of evidence had been moved into the custody and control of Canton PD?
It wasn't important to me. It's the state police investigation.
Even though it was on your property, in your Sally Port, with access through your key cards.
That's up to my chief. That's not up to me.
I see. To your knowledge, let me just ask it this way. To your knowledge, did anybody seek to photograph the vehicle when it arrived at Canton PD on January 29th, 2022, to your knowledge?
I have no personal knowledge of that.
Have you ever seen a photograph of that vehicle that was taken by someone in law enforcement on January 29th? I'm going to give you 3 days. January 29th, January 30th, January 31st. Sorry, 30th or February 1st.
I have seen photographs. I'm not sure what days they were taken. The photos were taken.
You have not seen a photograph that was taken on January 29th, however, have you?
I've never seen anything dated January 29th.
You've never seen a photo, and I'm going to go through this a little bit more. You've never seen a photograph that was taken on January 30th, have you?
Yeah, I have never seen any photographs with any dates on them,
Okay.
I believe.
Do you think that would have been you were at the time the head of detectives, correct?
No, that's not correct.
You were not, you had already moved from that spot?
I had,
In January of 2022, I may be wrong. I thought
You are wrong.
as the
It's,
lieutenant, you were also the head of detectives.
no, that was Lieutenant Gallagher at the time. I know you keep calling, it's a mix up. So we've had promotions since January 29th, and I think that's where the mix up might be.
So he was a
when you
lieutenant at the
refer to
time.
Deputy Chief Gallagher, he was actually Lieutenant Gallagher, and he was in charge of detectives at that time.
At some point, had you been in charge of detectives?
I became in charge of detectives in June of 2022.
June of 2022.
Yeah, approximately 6 months later.
Understood. You had been a detective previously, however.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
As a detective, do you believe that it would have been important to photograph, had you had your druthers to do it, it would have been important to photograph that vehicle when it came in so that it could be memorialized and documented the exact condition that vehicle came in on January 29th, 2022.
So this is important to know that unfortunately, John O'Keefe was deceased at this time. Once John O'Keefe becomes deceased, it becomes the state police's investigation, the Norfolk County District Attorney CPAC investigation. That's why it is not our investigation. It's up to the investigating agency to make those decisions.
Even something as uninvasive as taking photographs.
Yes.
Okay. You would agree, as a former detective and former head of detectives, that there are protocols for securing evidence of all types, correct?
Correct.
Those protocols dictate that not only is evidence properly secured, once it's seized, it needs to be properly secured, and it needs to be separated from other evidence to avoid something known as cross-contamination, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree with me that that is paramount in evidence handling in any investigation, correct?
Yes.
And that's because once evidence is cross-contaminated, its integrity basically collapses, right?
That's correct.
It's especially true of biological material, is that right?
Yes.
Because biological material, unlike a shovel, the biological material on the shovel becomes hyper sensitive. It's hyper important. It can be cross-contaminated with other items.
Sure.
It can tell an incorrect story, correct?
Yes.
It could tell, if there's cross-contamination, it could tell a false story.
It's been done. Yes.
And DNA, obviously, we're talking about biological material. The most sensitive of all the biological material is DNA evidence, right?
What do you mean sensitive?
So it might take some effort to move saliva from one item to another. It takes almost no effort to move DNA from one item to another and to detect it. You understand what I'm saying? The sensitivity of the detection.
No, I don't understand what you're saying.
You understand that I could touch this podium and you might not get my fingerprint off of it.
Correct.
Might not, correct?
Might not.
What do you think about getting my DNA off that podium that I
Yes.
just touched? You're absolutely going to get it, right?
Yes.
That's what I mean by sensitivity.
Okay.
You would agree that DNA is hypersensitive.
I would agree that DNA is better than fingerprints. Yes.
I'd like you to take a look at a series of photographs if we could. Can I approach you? Okay. There are 4 photographs, Gallagher, that I'd like you to look at briefly and familiarize yourself with if you can. Mr.
I'm all
Gallagher,
set.
do you recognize what's depicted in those photographs?
I do.
How do you recognize what's depicted in each one of those? There's 4 of them in front of you. Just generally, how do you recognize what's depicted in those photographs?
Generally, I know this is the exchange of custody from the Canton Police to Massachusetts State Police.
Are those taken inside the Sally Port, to your knowledge?
They are, yes.
Some of those photographs include the SUV,
One SUV picture, yes.
and some of those photographs include the blood evidence that you've earlier described, the solo cups, the Stop and Shop bag.
That is correct, yes, sir.
Their approach?
Yes.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to have these marked as next in order.
Any objections, Mr. Brennan?
No objection, thank you.
Six 54 through 57.
May I approach?
Yes.
Thank you. Permission to publish, Your Honor?
Okay.
I'd like to start with what's been marked as 54. It shows a license plate. Do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
Yes, based on the location, the vehicle, the broken taillight, I believe that's Miss Reed's vehicle.
And do you know when this photograph was taken?
I do not.
Do you believe it was taken between January 29th and February 1st?
Yes.
But you don't know when it was taken?
No, I don't have personal knowledge, no.
I just want to draw your attention very briefly, just to orient us to this area on the bottom right-hand corner. Do you see that, what looks like a white rag on the ground?
Yes, based on the pictures, I think it might be a paper towel, but yes.
Okay. If we could look at the next photograph, which is 55, looks like a paper bag. Do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
Yes,
What is that?
that's the Stop and Shop bag that contained the 6 samples.
Do you see the rag in that photograph as well?
Yeah, we could call it agree to call it a rag or
You think
paper
it's a
towel.
paper towel?
I'm not sure. It looks like a paper towel on the picture in the pictures, but it's a white object. Yes.
For all I care, it's the white thing. That's
Yes.
fine. All right. And do you see that that's next to a tire just at the top of the picture? Just for
Yeah,
orientation purposes?
Yeah, it appears to be 18 to 2 feet, 18 inches to 24 inches behind the tire. Yes.
Okay. And that, of course, is the tire of the SUV.
Yes, I would think
So
so.
that would be the right rear of the SUV, just a few inches from this bag, correct?
It would be a couple of feet from the bag. Yes.
Okay. If we could take a look at the next photograph. This is Exhibit 56 for the record. What's depicted inside the bag?
The red Solo cups.
And you still see the rag in the photograph.
I sure do. Yes.
So the SUV would be right here, correct? At the top of the left.
Well, I can't see the top of it. It would be, it's nearby. Yes.
Okay. And it's not just nearby, it's the right rear of the SUV that's nearby, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And one final photograph. This is Exhibit 57 for the record. What is inside that? What's depicted inside that bag?
The red Solo cups with coagulated blood.
And these are the only, we can have the lights, please. And so if you take that down. These are the only photographs that we have or that you've ever seen of those red Solo cups, that Stop and Shop bag, and the biological material in those red Solo cups.
The only ones I have seen. Yes.
And those photographs that you see are within 2.5 feet from the right rear of that SUV, correct?
Approximately. Yes.
And the right rear of that SUV houses the taillight material, correct? The taillight
The
area.
tail light area. Yes.
The cups were not sealed, correct?
The cups were not sealed.
The bag was not sealed, was it?
As far as I know, What do you mean by sealed?
Yesterday, you brought a box in. You remember that?
Yes,
That box had tape on it.
that's correct.
What color was the tape?
Red.
Why is the tape red?
It can be red, it can be blue. I mean, evidence tape is different colors.
Normally, in your experience, red evidence tape is used to formally seal evidence bags or evidence containers, correct?
Yes,
That's because it highlights to the eye a visual cue. Hey, that's important. It's been sealed. It's got bright red tape on it, correct?
correct.
Oftentimes, that tape has additional information on it as well, correct?
You could have initials on it of who put the tape on, yes.
Right. In other words, it might say evidence, correct? Might be pre-printed with the word
Pre-printed,
evidence.
yes, correct,
And it may have a place for initials to be.
correct.
And one of the reasons that you initial it is because if someone takes a razor blade and cuts through, or a knife and cuts through that tape, those initials are cut through. It has to be retaped and reinitialed, correct?
That is correct,
That is a basic protocol for chain of custody, is it not?
yes.
And that's to maintain the care, custody, and control and the integrity over the items and the items inside the evidence container, whatever they may be.
That's correct,
Whether they are biological material, physical items of evidence, a document, whatever.
correct,
None of that was done with what we just saw, correct?
correct.
We've agreed already that the blood was stored in non-sterile solo cups, correct?
Correct.
We've agreed that those cups were not sealed. The cups themselves were not sealed. There was no cap. There was no plastic, plasticine, saran wrap, nothing put over the cups, correct?
That is correct.
So they were open.
Yes,
They were not in an evidence bag. They were in a grocery bag, correct?
they were, yes.
Yesterday on direct examination, it may have been on cross-examination, Mr. Gallagher, I don't remember. You said, I have no idea where Sergeant Lang got that grocery bag, correct?
I don't know where the bag came from, no.
Could have come out of his back of his car seat, correct?
I'm assuming it came out of one of the cars, yes.
No idea what had been in that bag previous to those cups with blood being in the bag,
I
correct?
have no personal knowledge of that.
And obviously that bag, it goes without saying, is not a forensically sterile item either, correct?
Most bags are not sterilized.
And not only the cups were not sealed, the bag that the cups were in was not sealed.
They were only closed, correct.
You will agree that having unsealed and unsecured biological material, specifically blood material, situated right next to the right rear quarter panel of that SUV would not be within normal protocols for securing evidence, correct?
This was in the hands of a criminalist. It was an exchange of custody. I don't have any issue with it.
You don't know, you have no personal knowledge of where that bag had been or where the cups had been previous to that photograph being taken.
Correct.
You will agree that having unsealed and unsecured blood right next to the right rear of the SUV is a recipe for cross-contamination, wouldn't you?
Not in the hands of a trained criminalist, I wouldn't know.
Well, generally speaking, there were other people there that weren't the trained criminalists, right?
There was a photographer who took the pictures,
Who's not a trained criminalist.
correct. But
There was someone
the
else.
cups weren't in his hands. It was in the criminalist's hands. Those are the criminalist's hands you see gloved in that photo.
That's not my question. My question is, there was unsealed blood and in an unsealed bag for how much time, you don't know, sitting right there by the right rear of that SUV, correct?
No, I do know,
How do you know?
because I'm the one that brought the bag with the criminalist to that area. They photographed it, documented it, and then they transferred it to their plastic containers.
And before you grab that bag, you don't know where that bag had been for 3 days hence, 3 days before.
I know it had been in the temporary evidence room in a refrigerator.
You actually never saw it in the temporary evidence room in the refrigerator until February 1st, did you?
I don't recall.
So you don't know where that bag had been. You don't know who had handled those cups before you pulled them out of that temporary evidence locker, correct?
I have no personal knowledge. If anybody else, I have no personal knowledge. I took them out of the refrigerator. That's all I can testify to.
Do you remember us talking about this about a year ago?
Yes,
And I asked you, would you agree that having unsealed and unsecured blood next to the right rear portion of the SUV is a recipe for cross-contamination? I asked you that question.
you did.
And you said if I can speak to this incident alone. And I asked, that's a yes or no question.
That is
Do
correct.
you remember that?
Yes,
And you said, well, it's not a yes or no, but for your purposes, I would say yes.
correct.
So it is, at least in your mind, a recipe for potential cross-contamination, correct?
Not in this particular situation, which was clarified later on.
Although you did say yes in answer
Hypothetically,
to my
anything,
question.
hypothetically, anything is possible, yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's all I have.
All right, Mr. Brennan?
May I?
Right ahead, yes.
Lieutenant Gallagher, you mentioned that one of your colleagues who lived on Fairview Road had an owl camera.
Had an Arlo camera, yes.
That day or that morning when you went to Fairview and looked around where Mr. O'Keefe's, where you were directed Mr. O'Keefe's body was, were you aware that that gentleman had a camera?
Yes,
You shared with us that you had familiarity with the angle of that camera. Do you have any information whatsoever that he or anybody on his behalf used the phone to change the camera angle?
no, I don't.
Do you know if that camera could even reach the street if you wanted to?
I'm not sure.
Do you have any information that there are applications or different things you can do to the camera to move it remotely? Is there any evidence or information you have?
No,
When you decided not to ask him about the camera, was that based on anything other than your already familiarity and knowledge of the angle that camera was set?
no,
At any time he's ever shown you, you've ever seen clips from that camera, were they consistently showing the same area or did it change over time?
I'll allow it.
they were the same.
In your mind, why didn't you go seek footage from that camera?
In my mind,
Yes.
because I knew it wouldn't have captured anything. Activated cameras, and he didn't have them on the street because it's a busy street and the batteries would die, and who knows, very quickly if they captured the street.
You said that's a very busy street. Are you familiar with Fairview Road?
Yes,
Is that a road? Is that a public road?
it's a public way in the town of Canton, yes.
As a public way in the town of Canton, do you know who operates and cleans and monitors that road? Who's responsible for that?
Yes, the Department of Public Works for the town of Canton.
You were asked about a claim of a fight. Did any witness ever suggest to you that Mr. O'Keefe had been in a fight?
No,
When you first learned about Mr. O'Keefe, did you get a chance to actually look at his body?
no, I did not.
Did you get a chance to look at his wounds?
No, I did not.
Did you get a chance to examine his clothing and whether there was any trace evidence left behind?
I'll allow it.
No, I did not.
Early in an investigation, when investigators have no information, is it common to speculate?
Yes,
Sustained.
What is the natural process for an investigator when you start upon a situation and know nothing about what happened?
in this particular case, we came up with scenarios that possibly could have brought John to that spot. And we were focused on trying to find out and hopefully getting to the hospital. Hopefully the Can't Fire Department in the hospital would save his life and he could tell us how he got to where he was.
Was that anything beyond the surmise or speculation of detectives, or did that information come from a witness?
No, that was us. I guess you would call it spitballing on possibilities.
Did you ever come across a witness that said that this was, or Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were the result of a fight?
No, we did not.
If we could play Exhibit 51, please. I want to ask you some questions about the area you searched where you were directed Mr. O'Keefe was. Stop it there, please, Ms. Gilman. You did not see exactly where John O'Keefe was when he was found?
No, I did not.
Who directed you to this area?
I was directed twice, first by Sergeant Good and then by Sergeant Lang, Detective Sergeant Lang.
You shared with us yesterday you were looking in that area where you thought John O'Keefe was found.
Correct.
You asked questions about a berm. Is that the separation between the street and the yard?
Yes, it is.
Did you clear off a piece of that berm?
We did.
And the reason was?
We wanted to see what was there. We didn't know what was there.
Did you do a search from the flagpole all the way to the street?
No,
Did you do a search of that flagpole across the front yard?
no,
Did you do a search from that flagpole all across the berm, all the way down the line?
no. It was approximately 15 to 18 inches
And why such a limited search?
because we had no other reason than it was a medical call at this time.
Did you see snow in other parts of the yard?
Yes, the entire yard was covered.
And other than Officer Lang's footprints across the front of the yard, no other footprints?
There were no other footprints.
Any other visible signs that anything was moved or dragged across that side or front lawn?
No, not at all.
Any doggy prints in the snow?
No, not at all.
You were asked whether you sought a search warrant. Is there a difference between a witness and an eyewitness?
Yes,
You were asked questions about people in the home and they were characterized as witnesses. Did you have any information that anybody inside that home was a witness to what happened to Mr. O'Keefe?
no,
Did you have any information when you made these decisions about search warrants? Did you have any information from anybody, anywhere, that Mr. O'Keefe ever stepped 1 foot inside that home?
I'm going to allow it. Briefly, can we turn the lights on, Mr. Brennan?
Yes, please. Take that down.
Okay, sidebar number 2. Because of course they're objecting to Hank Brennan actually putting the kibosh on the was he inside the house thing, because that's their big thing, right? Yes. No footprints, no dog prints. You think there'd at least be dog prints if all those injuries were from a dog. But anyway. That line of questioning was good and bad, I think, for the defense. Although he's much calmer today, Mr. Jackson is. He did not seem very prepared for some of the answers, as I was thinking he should be. I mean, he has interviewed Mr. Gallagher many times, and he knows they're going to talk about this camera. Well, then again, that's his job to put it in front of the jury and make reasonable doubt, even if he knows that Mr. Gallagher has a good explanation as to why he doesn't have that footage. Waste of time. So I wonder how long this one will be. It seems to be part of the strategy on both sides that when they're doing cross and redirect and everything's getting dismantled, they want to come back in with more questions. But remembering on cross, they can only come back again if it's directly into something the Commonwealth enters new. So they don't get to re-emphasize the same point. It's like you had your shot, they came back and dismantled it.
As a lifelong law enforcement officer, have you obtained search warrants before?
yes,
Have you obtained search warrants for homes?
yes, many times.
Is there a certain requirement before you obtain a search warrant for a home?
Yes, critical legal standards, yes.
And what is that?
Probable cause.
And for us, what does that mean, probable cause?
So probable cause is a reasonable belief that a crime has been committed or evidence of a crime can be found in a specific location.
Can you obtain a search warrant if you do not have a reasonable belief that evidence exists somewhere?
No, you cannot.
Is there a process in getting a search warrant? Can you just walk in a home and say, I have a search warrant, or do you have to do something?
You have to write an affidavit in good faith, swearing before the court that all your information is accurate and truthful, and present the facts, circumstances, witness statements that would make you believe that there was a reason to violate your Fourth Amendment constitutional right.
When you walked into Fairview that morning with Sergeant Lang, did you have a search warrant?
No, I did not.
Did you have any reason to get a search warrant?
No reason at all.
When you walked in, were you invited?
Yes.
Did anybody,
Ooh.
did anybody prevent you from coming in?
No, not
Did
at all.
anybody ever ask you to leave?
No, not at all.
When you spoke to Mr. Albert, did he ever discontinue or end the conversation?
No.
Were you doing any favors for anybody that morning?
No, of course not.
If you had probable cause to search anywhere that morning, would you have?
Absolutely.
You were asked questions about memorializing your efforts when you were in the area of Mr. O'Keefe's body. And you were asked about written reports. Are there other ways to memorialize efforts other than writing a report?
Yes.
You videotaped, or you had Sergeant Good videotape your search?
That is correct.
Who told him to do that?
I did,
Why did you tell him to do that?
because I want it, in case it ever became an issue, I wasn't familiar with it being used before. I wanted people to understand how effective it was.
Do you know whether or not the police cars have dash cams?
They do, yes.
Do you know if any of the police cars had dash cams that day?
3 of them did, yes.
You mentioned that at some point you learned that Mr. O'Keefe had passed.
I'm not sure when we found that out, but yes.
Is there a statute or a rule when there is a death, whether a local county keeps the case or it needs to be transferred?
It's transferred, yes.
Is there a rule or is that a policy of the Canton Police Department?
It's a rule.
You were asked about Alexis and the Sallyport.
Correct.
Do you know exactly what time that Alexis was brought to the Sallyport?
I don't have any personal knowledge of that.
You were asked about a broken taillight. Have or had you reviewed any of the dash cams from the Canton Police Department that day?
Not that day, no.
You were asked about cross-contamination with the cups. When you brought the cups to the criminalist, where did you give them to him or her?
I carried them down to, we walked together, I carried them down to the Sallyport.
Did you see anybody using a white rag or a paper towel to dip it in to any
No.
of the cups?
No.
Did you see anybody shaking the cups or splashing?
No, they were handled very carefully.
Sustained is different.
Did you see anything that would cause you concern that there was some type of purposeful or inadvertent contamination or transfer?
Absolutely not.
And you've been trained.
Yes.
Did you see anything during that time that caused you any concern about the potential corruption of evidence?
No, I had complete faith in the criminalist.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
There is a box for identification that has a glass in it. I'd like to make that into evidence.
Jimmy.
I'll do it later then.
Is there any objection, Mr. Jackson, any objection to? Okay.
No objection, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, so we can put it in at any time then? And then when Mr. McDermott comes back
Thank
with it?
The glass that you showed the jury yesterday, when you showed it to us yesterday, did it look any differently than when you recovered it from the ground where you were looking that morning?
No.
Did you have any information that that glass came from inside Fairview Road?
No.
Do you know where that glass came from?
I have no personal knowledge where that glass came from.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Very briefly, Your Honor, you indicated that you were spitballing, to use your word, correct?
Correct.
Trying to figure out what happened.
Correct.
That's the job of an investigator, correct?
That is correct.
You
Yes,
don't
sir.
just take witnesses' words for things, do you?
That is correct.
You have to corroborate things.
Yes.
You have to look deeper,
Yes,
ask more questions,
absolutely.
actually investigate.
That's why we're here today.
You don't rule out anything or anyone
We
right
didn't-
off the bat, correct?
Correct. and we
No
did not.
one is ruled out. Nothing is ruled out,
That is
correct?
correct.
You
Yes,
follow where the evidence leads you, period, amen.
absolutely.
You didn't seek to separate the occupants at 34 Fairview, correct?
No.
You didn't interview Brian Albert formally, did you?
I did not know.
You were asked by Mr. Brennan, did he ever end the conversation precipitously? Did he end it earlier? Anything like that? He didn't end any interview because he wasn't interviewed, correct?
That is correct.
You didn't interview Brian Higgins.
That is correct.
You wouldn't interview Brian Higgins because he's your personal friend, correct?
Correct.
But you didn't have anybody else interview him either, did you?
Again, we're talking, I think we've gone over this and maybe you didn't understand. I didn't know Brian Higgins was at the house at that time.
Because you didn't ask anybody else who was at the house at that time.
I wasn't talking to anybody at that house, correct?
Might have been a good idea, wouldn't it?
Not at that time. We were there for one specific reason. We wanted to get to the hospital. So no,
Might have been a
I
good
disagree.
idea to sit Mr. Albert down and say, there, you're shaking your head again. I'm not done with my question. Might have been a good idea, Mr. Gallagher, since you happen to be there, no sweat off your brow, to sit Mr. Albert down and say, by the way, I got a pen and a paper. Who was here last night, just before John O'Keefe was found dead on your lawn? Who was here? Might have been a good idea, correct?
so that was already done by Detective Sergeant Lang, and it was documented in his report of everybody of what Mr. Jackson is asking.
Then how did you two not know that Brian Higgins was there?
I don't know where.
At
I
34.
mean, I'm confused. At what time?
Right.
At what time?
Exactly.
At what time?
When John O'Keefe arrived
Okay.
at 34 Fairview after midnight on January 29th, 2022.
So when I discovered Brian Higgins was there, wasn't until I read the report.
If you were standing in the house, Sergeant Blank, you just told these jurors, knew that Brian Higgins and everybody else was there.
He had obtained the names. He hadn't written the report yet.
I hadn't told his boss,
I don't recall.
even though you two went together to interview yet another witness.
That's correct. There was a very fast-moving scene and pace. That is correct.
While you were spitballing, you also didn't secure the camera footage that we've talked about, the Arlo footage.
Yes, that's correct.
You also didn't formally search the house, correct?
Absolutely
We
correct.
just talked about that. You didn't seek consent by Brian, by Brian Albert to search the house, correct?
That's correct.
You also didn't seek a search warrant. You talked about that, correct?
Correct.
You don't get punished or in trouble if you seek a search warrant and a judge who has to sign the search warrant. Normal citizens can't do that. It requires a judge's signature. You don't get in trouble or get spanked or get slapped or get fined if you seek a search warrant that is denied, correct?
In this particular situation, I would need to articulate facts, certain circumstances, and witness statements. What I had was nobody could put John O'Keefe in the house, including Miss Reed, and that we had a glass where they were coming from a bar, and I had 3 separate police officers, including myself, that had been in that house on 3 separate occasions and saw nothing amiss. I have a good faith obligation to present the truth to a judge. And if I don't, I can be found, end up on a Brady list or a Giglio list, as you know. And my right to my credibility to testify in my career is basically over. So yes, you can get in trouble.
You're talking about lying in an affidavit, sir.
I'm talking about misleading.
Correct.
I would have to twist circumstances to have the right to search Brian Albert's house. We had no reason, and there's been no reason since.
How about this? There's a dead guy on the lawn that looked like he potentially could have been in a physical altercation. How about that? Might that be of some concern to go inside the house and see if there was a struggle that started in the house?
There's still no evidence to go into the house.
You're the guy that's out on the lawn with no coat on. You think the coat might be inside the house? That might be a reasonable assumption? Yes or no?
No.
You got a guy outside with no shoe on. You think the shoe might be inside the house? That might be a reasonable assumption?
I never saw Mr. O'Keefe. I wasn't aware that he
Because you
didn't
didn't
have his
seek
shoes.
to find out the details. Other people knew every single fact that I just suggested at the time you walked in the house, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
The fact is you didn't seek a search warrant.
I wouldn't. Correct.
The fact is you never searched the house.
That's correct.
The fact is you never searched the basement.
That's correct.
The fact is you never searched the garage.
That's correct.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Have you ever learned one fact that would have justified searching that house?
Not to this day.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained is to form, and you can put the glass in right now, Mr. Brennan.
Thank you. Move that into evidence, please.
Exhibit 58.
All right, Lieutenant, you're all set, sir.
Thank you.
Your next witness, Mr. Brennan?
I'd like to play clip 18, please.
Thank you.
Your Honor, leave it alone.
Is that sidebar 3? If she allows him to come up?
May we approach?
These clips are very damaging. Before each one, they try to approach and get them removed. I'm wondering if this is going to be the one where Karen says she thinks she hit him, or that she expected to find him on the side of the road, or anything like that. Ooh, the fan's off. Ooh, couch. Uh-oh. No fan. What's going on here? Number 3, you believe? Yeah? This is number 3 sidebar for sure. Or do you mean number 3 option on what actually? Oh my, we're getting us. Oh, the fan is giving us a good look though, dear couch. It's nice shiny blades, all clean, spiffy. Oh boy. Well, the good news is that Mr. Jackson didn't drag this out all day. I know. Somebody resuscitate the fan. Resuscitate the fan. It probably does need a rest, Rocket Couch. You should take a break in between, exertions, so to speak. The whole chat is lit with, oh my gosh, the poor fan. So on all my platforms, like I sound like a dojo right now, like a little dodo bird, because we're all like, oh my God, the fan. But in regards to that cross, I do believe Alan Jackson did a better job of listing out his actual points at the end there. I will give him that. Something like I really wish he would have done in with some of the other witnesses, but I do also think that Lieutenant Gallagher did have reasonable answers in that jurisprudence. Obeying the law, the rule of law. It is not appropriate to just ask for a search warrant just because there might be something there. You need probable cause in it. I don't know about defense attorneys like Alan Jackson, but most are not supposed to clog up the system with frivolous things that do not have probable cause. It's not a thing. It's not something they should be doing. Reasonableness. That's what.
A good place to take our morning recess. So
Well,
we'll take a
morning break.
15 to 20 minute break.
All rise, please. Jurors, close your notebooks and follow me.
I really feel for this judge. It's like she has to deal with them. Okay, so it looks like we're all taking a break while the fan takes a break. All right, I'm going to put this up here like this, 10 or 15 minutes. Jackson did seem less aggressive this time. He's probably got a talking to from his client for that. Actually, the talking to that they've been reporting on the socials couch is the opposite, that the reads have been all over him for not being aggressive enough. They want him to go in for the blood. They want that killer instinct that they hired him for. Is that what it is? Jurisprudence instead of jurisprudence? Okay. Not saying it correctly, Liam. My apologies. Yep. Yep, jurisprudence. The science of philosophy of law. They have no theories of jurisprudence, but decide each case on its facts moving forward. There you go. Yep. Exactly. Oh, yeah, that's what you mean, Couch. Yes, exactly. Judas was not a prude. Okay, Liam. All right, you got me. I said it wrong. I did. It's just, it's jurisprudence. I get it. But we all know what we meant. Okay. He wasn't aggressive enough, and they probably don't like that. Exactly, they don't. That's been the reporting on the socials last week and this week in regards to the cross-examinations. He did look at, in the beginning, he did not seem very organized. Some of the answers that retired Lieutenant Gallagher was able to get out as to reasoning. Had he been prepared for those answers, he could have worked around them. The last thing you want is like your question to hit and you don't actually get the response you think, and the guy comes out looking better. But as far as the investigation, I mean, we all know that there were problems with it. Absolutely. But Mr. Gallagher was able, Lieutenant Gallagher was able to get some information out there for the jury that kind of takes a little bit of the steam out of the problems. Okay. Just a little. I mean, nothing's going to erase the problems in this investigation. And we really got a big one coming. At least the Commonwealth does. I don't know about this we stuff. I'm just a bystander, but the Commonwealth is going to have an issue when it comes to Massachusetts State Police taking over the case and lead investigator being Michael Proctor, because Proctor is an issue. And there's going to be, jury's going to have plenty to chew on there, and we should be prepared for, Mr. Jackson being in his glory during anything to do with Michael Proctor, because that's going to be a mess. Well, the Commonwealth is doing a good job of dealing with the issues from the first trial that came up, the issues that were hard to go around or they weren't prepared for as well or didn't address. In preparation of witnesses in regards to what to expect, firming up testimonies with timelines. That seems to be a little tighter this time around from what I've heard and seen. I did not watch the first Karen Reed trial daily, but I did do a good review before we got into this one. All the footage and everything is documented on Law and Crime and elsewhere. So I did get to see a lot of what unfolded. And it does seem to be a little bit of a tighter ship with the combination of Hank Brennan, Hank Brennan and Adam Lally. And Adam Lally was the lead prosecutor in the first trial. It does seem, with his knowledge of everything from that and working with Hank Brennan, that they're able to tighten it up. And I can't wait to see the next clip when they come back from break, because we love hearing Karen Reed testifying in her own words without actually testifying. That has been the biggest change from trial 1 to trial 2 is that Karen's obvious public relations tour, all of those interviews she did, trying to get her story out there without testifying, are now all of those words are being used against her in little clips by the Commonwealth for consciousness of guilt. Oh, you mean jurisprudence? Okay. Sounds like a while stagnant. Okay, we're still on Judas. Oh, I need more coffee. And the fan is still not going. I don't know why. I mean, it's warming up today, and I don't know, they don't want to put that air conditioner on, so I don't know why the fan isn't going. Yes, her testifying without testifying is being made into testimony. It actually is, Couch, and here's the problem. The defense would like to actually submit their own clips from those interviews, but all they can do is actually submit longer clips of the ones that Hank Brennan is using. They can't do different ones because without her taking the stand to testify, she's not allowed to testify that way. They can't enter that into evidence that way. They've been going back and forth with that. I do believe the defense does plan on entering a few clips, or at least I had heard them going back and forth about it. That'd be interesting. I'm wondering if the use of all of these clips with her own words will actually propel her to consider, and her team to consider, her actually taking the stand in her own defense to clarify some of these things. And I wonder if she would come off as believable. I mean, just sitting there at the defense table, she does not come off as someone that you feel a lot of empathy or sympathetic for right away. Yeah, the door needs to be opened by somebody. Yep. Because it's her own words. It's like a statement. It's like testimony. And she's really not allowed to testify without testifying, Oh, the Commonwealth can use her own words against her as evidence, but the defense can't put it in as testimony or evidence, her own words, without her testifying. From what I understand. I mean, there are a few, like you said, a few scenarios where if the door got opened, they may be able to. If someone quotes something she says from there or refers to it in such a way that that's what she did and said, and then they use the clip to prove she didn't, that might be a different thing, There's a couple of different scenarios to get it in. But I don't know if they would actually apply in this situation as of yet. That's something I'm going to jot down and check more into, actually. Well, I did put it in the chat, but here's something I was thinking about yesterday. Remember how he was going off about how nobody came out of the house with all the lights going on and the chaotic scene, all that flashing lights and all. And it occurred to me, like last night, when we're well off of the court and everything shut down for the day, and here I am like watching something else, and I'm like, all of those lights, like, of course, like the snow plows, they all use the same kind of lights. At least they do in my area, and you often hear them. But I don't get out of bed when I see the flashing lights of the snow plow in the middle of a snowstorm. So like they were wondering why nobody came out, nobody next door, nobody in 34, nobody from across the street. There's a snowstorm going on. And so if there's traffic on their street and flashing lights, I mean, it's only reasonable to think they would consider that it was the snowplow. And who's going to get out of bed at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning? 5 o'clock it was, right? Towards 6 o'clock with the flashing lights when, it's cold. You've been up late the night before. And reasonably, you're thinking it's the snowplows. Why would you get up? Go looking outside to see who might be lying in your front lawn. You know. Liam, are you talking about that look she gives them? I know. She even looks at the jury like that. It's not good. It's not good. Yeah. And yet, when she smiles and all, she looks like very friendly and everything and quite approachable. But when she sits at that defense table, she does not put the charm on like she does when she goes outside to talk to the cameras or the microphone. I guess they need a bigger mic. Like if they put a bigger microphone in front of her, maybe if she thought she was giving an interview, she would put on the charm. Well, she really needs to put some of that charm on for this jury. Flashing lights in a snowstorm, at most, I think car accident. Still doesn't mean I'm going to look outside. Exactly. Oh, here where I am, we get the same kind of flashing lights like you do for the police. They're blue, Oh, some of them have the yellow, but we have blue and yellow. Exactly. Yeah. And does anybody another thing that occurred to me is the deadening of sound during a snowstorm. Does anybody ever notice how quiet it gets with a snowstorm? Like there is somewhat of a deadening of sound that happens during snowstorms, at least for me. Things get quieter. Yeah, they have the blue and tow trucks do. Tow trucks do here too. Both the blue and the yellow. Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking. That would be reasonable as to why nobody was like thinking anything was abnormal was going on or anything of an emergency type nature or anything that they, the last thing they'd be thinking is that there was a body on their front lawn. No, what are you gonna do? And that fan is still not moving, which makes it difficult to find out if the stream is still live. Like I'm so used to watching it spin that the fact that it's not is a little disruptive because like how do we, I have to keep checking to make sure the feed is okay. And of course they took the morning break from the sidebar, so now I'm like a few minutes off on my timeline here. But we'll fix that. We'll fix that after. But I am very curious as to what the clip is going to be. On a residential street, fender bender is way more likely than something that would kill a person. Exactly. And, he keeps talking about the condition of John O'Keefe's body. Now, granted, Lieutenant Gallagher did not see the body. It was gone. But, so he's not seeing the black eyes or, the wound to the back of his head. But anybody who did see him could just as likely think he got hit by the snowplow. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, you don't automatically assume that Karen Reed backed into him, but just as likely it could have been the snowplow or something if he was walking on the street. I mean, any type of accident, anybody could have clipped him, with the visibility of the snow and everything like that. It would just look more likely. I did that, that was quite clever of Alan Jackson to get in there the condition of the no shoe and no coat and looking like he got into a fight, knowing that Mr. Gallagher did not see that body, but he got it there in front of the jury again. to remind me. Well, that reminds me of like yesterday and the day before's testimony, or other a lot of testimony since the beginning. And Alan Jackson keeps having all the witnesses repeat the "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him" statement. And I'm like, is he just trying to make it like like a non-sec? Like, do you just keep repeating it enough and it's not going to matter to the jury anymore? Because that's pretty damning testimony, especially since there's a clip where she says she actually knows she said it, but it's not exactly what she meant, in that something along the lines of she doesn't believe it's as many times as law enforcement is saying. You know, at one point she said it had a "did I," or, you know, a question mark with it. She keeps saying that, but no one has inferred that. Well, it's curious because he himself has repeated it multiple times, and even in the cross examination of Katie MacLaughlin, he even said that sounds like a confession, right? Like a confession. And I'm like, please don't put that in the jury's head. Like, dude, seriously? Like, you know, we're supposed to be doing the best thing possible here for your client, you know, just to give them the notion. I don't know what the jury's thinking. I mean, that's pretty confident to think they're not going to take what you said into consideration. But the one thing the defense doesn't lack is confidence. They are very confident in this tactic to run with this conspiracy stuff. Yeah, they definitely have some confidence there. I definitely need some more coffee. I'm checking the socials to see if anyone knows what that sidebar was about. Sometimes they'll let us know. Basically, they all just say that it's clear that the defense is trying to disrupt the storyline. Like every time Hank Brennan goes to show a clip, they've got to do a sidebar. They've got to disrupt things, you know. I mean, it is like they're the ones that suggested she do the documentary, so. But I do not. I mean, most people are just going on and on about how the investigation is flawed. Law enforcement should be embarrassed, you know, going on. I don't think that the retired lieutenant, his testimony was that bad for the Commonwealth. I would say it did leave some openings, some rather large openings for the defense, but it's going to be up to the jury. It could go either way. I don't think it was a slam dunk that some think it is. But, you know, there's just me. Nobody is saying anything about what the sidebars or anything that's going on in the courtroom. They are saying that the jury was paying attention during the cross-examination, more so than yesterday. Especially, but looking a little startled with the Mr. Jackson's gesticulations and, loudness and stuff like that. I guess he's trying to end his keep today, with the bringing on that killer instinct, but he really needs to pick his moments for effectiveness. Mm. Nope, nothing so far. What do you guys think? I mean, I think it's just the fan is back turning again. I'm going to bring it up because I think they're going to come back any second. I'll still stay unmuted here and talk, but good morning, Teresa. It's quite the little event today. The cross-examination was quite heated with retired Lieutenant Paul Gallagher. There's some moments where Mr. Jackson really honed in and is definitely going to be making the investigation look shoddy. They could try to defend it as much as they can and just be reasonable about it, especially things like with the camera and stuff. There are reasonable explanations for why not to get the footage. He knows the footage only goes past the house, the porch. It's not going to get the area, that he wants. It's kind of like a waste of time. But, hindsight is perfect vision, so of course, if they could go back in time and make different choices, maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. But I do agree about the not having probable cause to search the house just because of where the body was found, and especially since the body was found at the end of the property, like towards the street, actually closer to the other house. And we are back.
All right, I'll see counsel at sidebar, please.
Oh my goodness! All right, because we're going to be discussing whether or not to do with the clips, right? It's got to be about the clips. All right, so that's our fourth sidebar. It's our second one. Oh no, our third one coming back our second one coming back and going immediately to sidebar. We started with a sidebar. We come back from break with a sidebar. We had a sidebar right before break. She just announced that they must have exasperated her or she needed to check something out. I don't know why it does that, Teresa. It must be something in your settings. I'm not. Mine, it takes me to wherever I am in the video. Okay, that was a short
Bring
sidebar.
them in, please.
So the jury's coming back in, and hopefully we're going to be able to see our clip now. Okay. Okay, they just muted us again. I don't know why they keep doing that. I guess because you could hear the attorney conversation coming through. So possibly they hit the mic on their desk.
Do you need another one, Chrissy? Do you need one more?
Hmm. Why is Mr. Alessi keep popping up and down like a weasel? Hey, what is going on?
All rise to the court, please. Jurors entering.
Okay. Took a while to get the jury together. Yep, number 4 couch. Let's see how many more. I think we hit 11 yesterday, 10 or 11. There was a lot yesterday. Well, and that would be a total of both morning and afternoon. When I say yesterday, no, one stream or the other, both streams. We're talking about sidebars here. Izzy, Liam, yeah. Like, did you see that? Like, I said, it is a little bit odd. I watched him like stand up, get down. Like,
All right, Mr. Brennan.
Thank you. The Commonwealth moves into evidence and asks to play clip 18.
Okay.
So when John got out of the car at Brian Albert's house, he took my full vodka soda, which is sitting in the cup holder.
oh, the glass.
Thank you. We'll
The Common,
mark that.
thank you.
Well, that answers where the glass came from.
All right, your next witness.
One more, please, Your Honor. The Commonwealth moves into evidence and seeks to play clip number 17, please.
Okay.
I gave an interview with ABC with Matt Gutman. I think this was whom I gave the interview to, and I said, he asked why was I saying, could I hit him? Did I hit him? And I said, yeah, my first thought was I've been out late, I've been drinking, and he's in the general vicinity of where I last saw him. I mean, they talk about the left side of the property and the right as if it's, Hammersmith Farms. It's a postage stamp. It's 50 feet. So he's in the front yard to the left of the front door, and no one's coming out of the house. Jen's telling me nobody's seen him. So I'm thinking, Jesus, was I starting to pull away and I ran over his foot? Like, he's roughly where I left him. So yeah, when I found him, I was thinking, did I like clip him somehow?
Well, there you go. Well played, Mr. Brennan.
Okay.
Thank you.
So in order, it has 18 and then 17, or are they in the reverse order on the clip?
If I may see the exhibit. This one exhibit contains clip 12, clip 12A, clip 16, clip 17, and clip 18, all which were previously introduced.
And it's exhibit number what? Thank you. All right, thank you. Your next witness, Mr. Lally.
Yes, Your Honor. Commonwealth call Mr. Robert Gilman to the stand.
Okay.
solemnly swear the evidence to give to the court and jury in the case now hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, super.
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury, stating your last name, spelling your last name for the court?
Good morning. My name is Robert Gilman, Gilman,
And what is your occupation, Mr. Gilman?
meteorologist,
And where did you go to school?
Northeastern University and the Pennsylvania State University, Penn State.
And what degrees did you receive from those institutions?
I received a Bachelor of Science in Earth Science and in Meteorology.
Now, following your education, where did you first go to work?
I worked at the U.S. Geological Survey while I was finishing my education. I also worked at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in Washington. I worked at AccuWeather at Penn State. And then I started my own business when I came back to the Boston area, working both in media, writing a column for the Patriot Ledger, radio, 95.9 WATD, and also providing information to municipalities about snow and ice in consulting.
Now, starting first with the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, what did you do there?
I worked in the Division of Site Safety and Earthquake Analysis. That was primarily involving siting nuclear power plants.
And as far as AccuWeather Inc., what was it that you did there?
Meteorology, I worked starting out drawing maps. We drew our own maps back in those days, providing observations to meteorologists and helping develop forecasts.
Now, you had worked, you had mentioned earlier in your testimony, you'd worked as a meteorologist in New York for the radio, for the Patriot Ledger and New England Weather Service. Is that correct?
New England Weather Science, that's correct.
And how long a period of time span are we talking about as far as your work as a meteorologist?
Over 45 years.
Now, if you could explain to the jury just in general terms, what is meteorology?
Well, the term is actually a shortened term of hydrometeorology, one who studies falling water things. And it's a study of the atmosphere.
Now, in your work as a meteorologist, what are the different types of data that you study and examine?
Mostly measured data such as temperature, humidity, wind, precipitation, but also sensing data with satellites that orbit the Earth and with radar that shoots electronic beams out and comes back and forms images that we can analyze.
Now, beyond the satellites and the radar, where does that other data come from?
Well, the observing stations generally are at airports, for instance, but they're also at utilities, and there are private networks. And these either automated or amateur weather observers take down data such as I just mentioned, temperature, precipitation, visibility at these different locations.
And what is your current occupation?
Meteorologist.
And where is it that you currently work?
I work for Precision Weather Forecasting Incorporated, and I also do work to assist requests for past weather data, both for clients of ours at Precision Weather Forecasting and other requests for weather data.
And is that a company that you started yourself in conjunction with other people?
Yes, thank you. It's a company that we founded, my partner and I've been working with meteorologist Bill Guile for 30 years. We're both local, and we found that we had a lot of interest together. I don't stay up 24/7. He stays up overnight a lot of times, and we work much better on that shift kind of work during the day, answering questions of clients about snow and ice especially. So we formed our own corporation, a Massachusetts corporation, in 2016.
And how long, even prior to the incorporation in 2016, how long have you been working in that capacity for building that company?
Oh, I would say over 45 years, going back to 1979, 1980.
And what type of service does your company provide to your clients?
Precise snow and ice information. I own the website snowandice.com, and our clients depend on very local, precise snow and ice guidance. It's for safety, it's for efficiency, environmental concerns of not putting down a lot of chemicals when snow is going to change to rain, that kind of thing. So we're giving very local, precise weather information to help anyone that has snow and ice management concerns.
And if you could expound upon that just a little, sir, as far as what types of data or information is it that your company provides?
Mainly precipitation timing, when snowfall might begin in a particular place, the intensity of the snow, whether it might be expected to change to ice or rain, or go back to snow or ice to help with those kinds of operations.
And where does that data or information come from?
As meteorologists, we develop it ourselves. It's all in-house. We take a variety of different data from numerical modeling, guidance products, and observational information, and develop the forecast specifically for the client.
And as far as your clientele is concerned, to whom are you providing this data or information?
We work for most of the towns and the city in Norfolk County. We work for the largest cities in Massachusetts, some of the largest colleges and universities and other facilities, hospitals.
And what is the purpose of you providing that information to the clientele to whom you give it to?
Again, safety, efficiency, environmental concerns, to give them the best information to do the job they need to do. And it's a difficult job, as you can imagine.
Now, at some point, sir, were you asked to look at some data related to the Canton, Massachusetts area in the time frame leading up to and including January 29th, 2022?
Yes.
And what were you asked to do?
I was asked to provide a simple report of the days preceding January 29th, 2022, and a more detailed report of the early morning hours of January 29th about estimating snowfall during that time period.
And in total, as far as that total time frame, do you recall what dates you were looking at?
I believe it was January 26th to the 29th.
And during that time frame, was there a significant storm forecast for that time period?
Oh, yes.
And what was the forecast for?
Well, the forecast for the first couple of days was dry and very cold to bitterly cold. As we got closer to the 28th and 29th, we were looking at a storm coming in from the west and strengthening along the mid-Atlantic coastline. And we issued warnings, again, 2 to 3 days ahead of time to let our clients know that this was going to be a significant winter storm.
And specifically with the storm, what was the timing associated with that forecast as far as when would the storm begin?
We expected the storm, the snowfall, and the increase in wind to begin very late Friday evening, the 28th, with light to very light snow, and then to increase in intensity, especially later in the morning and through the late morning and midday of the 29th.
Now, from a scientific perspective, what is a blizzard?
A blizzard technically requires a great reduction in visibility. It doesn't even have to be snowing, either falling or blowing snow visibility a quarter mile or less, with winds of 35 miles an hour, either sustained or frequent gusts for 3 hours or more.
Now, did this particular storm meet that criteria?
The storm did, absolutely, for Boston and much of the greater Boston area, including in Canton at the Blue Hill Observatory. However, not every spot had all of those criteria during the entire time period that the snow was falling.
Now, how significant a storm actually occurred, not taking away from your forecast, but actually occurred during that time frame?
This was the biggest January storm in history, with 27 inches of snowfall. And it snowed heavily for several hours, visibility under a quarter of a mile. And the temperature was dropping during that time, and the winds were gusting frequently to 40 and 50 miles an hour in this area.
Now, that data that you looked at from that time frame of January 26th through the 29th of 2022, what types of data specifically did you look, or actually, we'll get to specifics in a moment. What data in general terms did you look at in your analysis?
3 locations, the Blue Hill Observatory, which is the oldest continuously operating weather observatory in North America, close by. Boston, which is a first order weather station at Logan Airport, and Norwood Airport, which is a mile away. And those were the 3 locations. I was considering the surface observations from those locations, also considered other types of observational data. I mentioned the radar data, so the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration maintains a NEXRAD NOAA database. And third was the National Operational Hydrologic Remote Sensing Center, which categorizes snowfall and snow depth. So those 3 different types of data at those 3 different locations.
Now, when you talk about the Blue Hills Observatory being the oldest in the country, how old is it?
It was established by Abbott Roch, who left his family home at 5 Commonwealth Avenue in Boston and built this really strange little structure at the top of Great Blue Hill on February 1st of 1885.
And do you know how far away from 34 Fairview Road that Blue Hills Observatory is?
Yes, I do. If you don't mind me consulting my note for a moment.
So what are you reading, Mr. Gilman?
I'm reading notes I took on measurements from Blue Hill to Fairview. And that's, may I answer the question?
Yes, yes, you
I'm
are.
okay with Your Honor, I just wanted the record to know.
Yes, that's why I asked him what he's reading.
Thank you, Your Honor.
That would be 7 miles.
And the Norwood Airport, how far again is that, or how far away again is that between Norwood Airport and 34 Fairview Road?
1 mile.
Now, these measurements that you used in your analysis, are you familiar with how those measurements are taken or how they're done at each of those 3 locations?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury sort of how those measurements are done or how those calculations or the data is collected?
Sure. Boston, again, is a first order station. It's equipped with automated equipment. It's called ASOS, Automated Surface Observing System. And it takes measurements of temperature, visibility, wind, humidity at very frequent intervals throughout the 24-hour day. It also collects precipitation, which isn't easy if you think of Logan Airport being out in the harbor and trying to collect every raindrop in that environment. But they have a very sophisticated rain gauge system that actually does a fairly good job of collecting precipitation. Moving on to Norwood Airport, very similar. It's not as high a caliber a station as Boston is in terms of the frequency of observations or the complete set of data. Blue Hill Observatory is a special case indeed. It had been manned for most of the day for many years. The former observer is still alive and well in Hingham, Bob Schilling. For the last several years, 10, 15 years or so, it was an ASOS system that I just mentioned, but in recent years that was cut back. So there are observers that are there and they take observations when they're there, and they take automated observations otherwise and take a record of that. But it's not on the, for instance, the FAA network, Federal Aviation Administration. Weather data, of course, is extremely critical to aviation, and they have a network of weather data. The Blue Hill Observatory currently is not on that network.
Now, how the data is collected or calculated at each of those respective facilities, is that how it's standardly collected within the industry?
Yes.
And is it a routine both in your practice and in your meteorological industry as a whole, relying on that type of data and the way it's collected?
Yes, there are standards established. I'm a member of the American Meteorological Society, the Professional Society of Meteorologists, and there are standards that are established on taking weather measurements.
Now, may I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Gilman, Your Honor, may I remain here just
Sure.
a moment? Mr. Gilman, I'm handing you a series, I believe, about 6-page documents. You recognize that?
Yes.
Back a little bit more so the jurors can see the witness, please.
Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize that?
This is a local climatological data sheet for January 2022 for each day. And I believe there's, as I look through it, hourly reports of weather observations, especially for January 29th at Norwood Airport. And this is published by the U.S. Department of Commerce, NOAA, the National Environmental Satellite Data and Information Service.
And at least in part, is that the data that you were testifying about before, as far as the data that you relied upon in your study here?
It's one element, that's right. And again, I put a lot of strength to this data because it is in such proximity to Canton, to the location we're concerned about.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth seeks to introduce and admit as the next exhibit.
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 60.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, may I return what's now been marked as Exhibit 60 to the witness?
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Gilman, starting with snow accumulation, during the period that you were looking at, what is it that you found?
The snow began to accumulate during this winter storm. And by the way, I think I can use the term nor'easter, blizzard, bombogenesis, bomb cyclone, winter storm, all referring to the storm event of the 28th, mostly the 29th. The first snowfall began late in the evening on the 28th and continued into the 29th.
Just starting with that snapshot of the evening of the 28th, how much snow accumulated on the 28th before turning the page to the 29th?
Very little, enough to track a cat, 0.2 of an inch.
Now, with reference to the 29th, were you able to determine from that data sort of the hourly snowfall as it came down?
Yes, as the hourly precipitation data, temperature, and other information was reported, I was able to analyze it each step of the way as the storm progressed.
And from your analysis, sir, could you describe to the jury, sort of going bit by bit, what was that hourly snowfall for the 29th?
As I said in the report, it's estimated that as it began, it was on the order of 0.3 of an inch an hour on the 29th until 1 o'clock. and it stayed in that light range. And anything under an inch an hour of accumulation is termed light snowfall. So that by 3 and 4 a.m., we were looking at 3, 4, 5/10 of an inch an hour. There started to be an increase more noticeable in the intensity by 5 a.m. with another inch, and then by 6 a.m. with another 1.2 inches.
If I could stop you there just for one moment, Mr. Gilman. So from the time period from when the storm began on the 28th to the time period of 6 a.m. on the 29th, how much in total snowfall had accumulated at that point?
I believe that was, do my arithmetic, 3.9 inches up to 6 a.m.
And I'm sorry, sir, if you could continue now going forward from 6 a.m. on the 29th.
Then we started getting into a more moderate snowfall, and again, that's an inch an hour more, so that by 7 o'clock was another inch and a half. By 8 o'clock, another inch, inch 0.1. And then by 9 and 10 o'clock, it was getting to be moderate to heavy snowfall based on radar returns, the next-rad radar information, based on the visibility reduction, based on the amount of precipitation that was melted in the rain gauges, based on other reports from cooperative observers. So that's on the order of an inch and a half an hour of intensity, and that continued through the middle of the day, rapidly accumulating on the ground, and it accumulated at even 2 inches an hour by the early afternoon before it started to wind down in intensity, as these types of storms always do. By 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening, it was back down to light snowfall, ½ inch to 2/10 of an inch. And the snowfall accumulation had ended by 10 o'clock at night.
If I could take you back just a little bit to right before it turns from the moderate inch and a half per hour to about the lighter snow. About how much snow had accumulated at that point? Around 6 p.m. or so.
Around 6 p.m.?
Yes.
Well, again, I'm just going to do the arithmetic of subtracting the snowfall after 6 p.m., which was 1.3 inches from the total, which was 23.8. Do that arithmetic. 23.8 was the total snowfall, and 1.3, 22.5 inches.
So that's 22 and a half inches, just short of 22, excuse me, just short of 22 and a half inches by 6 p.m. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what was the total snow accumulation from the storm in its entirety again?
23.8 inches.
So just short of 2 feet. Is that correct?
That's correct. The biggest snowstorm in January in our history.
Now, sir, have you prepared some visual aids to assist the jury with the snow accumulation?
Yes.
May I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Gilman, showing you 3 documents. Just ask you to look at those. We're helping you finish.
Yes, I've seen these, yeah.
And what do you recognize each of those 3 to be?
The first one is a storm warning report that was sent to our clients in this area regarding the upcoming snowfall, winter storm. And we began sending this type of a report, as I said, 3 days prior. This was one of the last ones that was sent as the storm was getting underway in this area. So this was sent by my colleague, my partner, Bill Guile, at 8 o'clock that Friday evening. And it's a detail of when the snow is going to start, when the first inch will be on the ground, the total snowfall, the duration of the storm, and what's going to happen after the storm, which is also critical for our clients to know how to clean it up and what kind of post-storm conditions as far as temperature and other things to consider. So that's the heading of the form. Then we get into this detailed 6-hour time block series. And of course, that begins at 6 p.m. to midnight since this was issued at 8 p.m. And we talk about the weather conditions and how much, if any, snowfall.
I don't mean to interject, but just you recognize what's on that, and that is a forecast that you sent out, correct?
Yes. Well, our company sent out, my partner, Bill Guile, actually sent it.
And the last two sheets that you have before you, what are those?
These are images taken from one of those 3 sets I talked about, the the data set from NOAA, the National Operational Hydrologic Remote Sensing Center. And it's a image of snow depth or snow on the ground at 2 times on January 29th. The first time is 1 a.m. and the second time is 7 a.m. And it's a map of Greater Boston down to the South Shore into northwestern Rhode Island.
Yes.
Almost introducing the next 3 exhibits.
No objection, Your Honor.
Right, thank you.
and 63.
And again, Your Honor, may I return those to the witness?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Gilman, what is the difference between a forecast versus a report of actual conditions or weather measurables?
As defined, a forecast is your best estimate based on science and data available of how the future is going to play out in terms of weather, the amount of snowfall, the temperature, the observed data. And I often make the distinction between soup and sandwich. Weather and forecast always seem to go together, but there actually is weather, and that's separate from what the forecast is, and there's always some small distinction. Lately, we've been getting pretty good at getting accurate weather forecasting done, but it is the actual weather that's measured. How much snow is on the ground, how much snow fell, what the wind speed was during any given period, temperature, those kind of elements that actually occurred.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, may I publish to the jury on the screen a copy of the forecasting document?
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if you could. Thank you. And Mr. Gilman, what's up on the screen? Is that what you have before you as the forecasting document that's now been marked as an exhibit?
Yes.
Okay. And if you could, directing the jury's attention from left to right as far as the columns go, if you could walk the jury through sort of what we're looking at in this particular area.
Sure. So below the heading, I think I defined the heading just before, we have these 6-hour time periods. So the columns are the day, in this case, today being Friday in this forecast, the weather, the amount in inches, that would be of snowfall, the temperature, that's the air temperature, and air temperature is taken 5 feet above the ground in a natural surrounding. The road temperature, also in Fahrenheit, and that is the surface ground temperature, which is very important to our clients. And then we have wind, both sustained and gusts. Below that, we have special notes to amplify our message. A lot of times people don't read everything, so we try to highlight what's important or add something that wouldn't be in one of those columns.
And as far as the air temperature as concerned, as far as it being recorded, does that incorporate wind chill into that temperature, or is that something else?
Wind chill is a calculated amount or figure of heat transfer based on how human beings react to temperature. So this is the actual temperature that would be measured on a thermometer.
And thank you. And Ms. Gilman, if you could scroll down. And again, on the bottom portion of this aid, again, if you could walk the jury through what we're looking for and what we're looking at, and specifically, if you could draw their attention to the snow accumulation that's forecast in this.
Certainly. The same applies to the columns. Now we're into the tomorrow. So since this was issued at 8 p.m. on Friday, tomorrow is Saturday. And we're going through each 6-hour period and how much snowfall could be expected. You see it starts with 3 or 4 inches and then ramps up as we get later in the morning to as much as 6 to 10 inches of snow. And you can calculate what that hourly rate might be based on the 6-hour period. We give that type of range because it's scientifically accurate. People really want to know every minute, every hour, and that's just not something that modern science can do. So we give this period to be as accurate as possible while still being extremely precise. 7 to 9 inches during the afternoon period, and then it winds down to 2 to 3 inches toward midnight.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Now, Mr. Gilman, the snow accumulation, how is that measured as far as the measurements that you get from each of these 3 sites? How is that measured at those sites?
At Blue Hill Observatory, there's often an observer, a trained observer, making measurements. The standard is to use what we call a snowboard. And if any of the members of the jury do weather observing or no weather observers, you might be familiar. It's just like a piece of plywood, something that doesn't radiate like pavement would or a house would. Just something that would allow the snowfall to accumulate in a natural way. And then that's cleaned off every 3 hours. And those amounts are added throughout the duration of the snowfall event. So that's the way the observers at the Blue Hill Observatory literally have been doing that since 1885. When you come to Logan Airport, you don't have an observer right there. There was back in before the 70s, 80s, around that time period, before ASOS came into play. There were people that were in the weather office that would go out and make those measurements. Now they contract with an observer. And I'm not sure of the location right now or during this event in 2022. I believe it may be in Winthrop, but it's very nearby to Logan Airport. And this is a contracted observer that makes these measurements. At Norwood, there is no snowfall measurement made right at that location.
Now, you've used a term a couple times as far as heavy snow. What is scientifically, what do you mean by heavy snow?
Heavy snow, again, can be defined in 2 ways. Either by the reduction in visibility or by the accumulation rate. So it's an intensity of snowfall. And in terms of visibility, it would be less than 1/4 of a mile. So something like 3/8 of a mile. That's when you get into the heavy snowfall range. Intensity, in terms of the way it accumulates, might be more familiar to most of us since we don't know what that visibility might or might not be, but it's 1.5 inches an hour or more. It's not something that you want to be driving in, or very hazardous and big impact on a lot of our activity.
Now, what is the scientific definition of whiteout conditions?
I don't know if there's a scientific explanation, but it's a good term that is used quite a bit, and it would be heavy snowfall. Again, snowfall can reduce visibility to near zero, even below 3/8 of a mile. you may be getting 2 inches of accumulation, 3 inches per hour. When you have a very convective, energetic storm, like a thunder snow event, a lot of upward motion in the atmosphere, you could get 4, even 5 inches of snowfall per hour, and that certainly would be termed whiteout. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we drive a lot these days, that people are familiar with limitations to being able to drive a car. And, if you're driving along, the windshields are going, wipers are going at maximum speed, and you just can't make out anything on the horizon or the car in front of you, you say it's whiteout conditions. That's the way it's reported.
And did each of those, as far as heavy snow and whiteout conditions, occur in this storm?
Heavy snow definitely occurred in this storm. I've heard it referred to as whiteout conditions, and it's somewhat in the eye of the beholder, but I would say yes, whiteout conditions did occur.
Now, turning your attention, Mr. Gilman, now to the topic of visibility. Can you describe to the jury what your understanding of that term is as it applies to what you do?
Well, visibility is just the reduction of how far you can see based on some weather element, as long as we're talking about weather. So haze can reduce visibility, fog, different types of precipitation, smoke can reduce visibility in the atmosphere. But in terms of snowfall, the heavier the intensity of the snowfall, the lower the visibility.
And so from a meteorological standpoint, how is that measured?
Well, it's measured in miles, or quarters of a mile, which is the standard here in the United States. And you sometimes see it in eighths of a mile, but generally with these automated systems, it would be 3/4 of a mile or half a mile, or as the snow intensity lightened up quite a bit, it may go up to 7 miles. I've seen snow falling at 10, even 11-mile visibility, which you'd hardly notice if you were out. That's not much of a reduction in visibility, but it can come all the way down to near 0.
And what was the lowest, if you know, the lowest recorded measurement as far as visibility as it pertained to this storm?
I would base that on the Norwood Airport because it was, especially in this immediate area, and they do a good job of measuring visibility, and that came down to 1/4 of a mile at the airport. It certainly may have been lower than that at times, but was on the order of 1/4 to perhaps as low as 3/8 of a mile or 1/8 of a mile between observations.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to the topic of temperature. How is temperature measured in your analysis as far as the data that you have?
Temperature is measured with a thermometer, and there are different types. We depend heavily on electronic thermometers now. Measure the amount of heat in the air, and we get a reading, and we generally use that reading as the air temperature.
Now, what is the difference between air temperature and road temperature?
Again, air temperature, the standard is the temperature of the atmosphere 5 feet above the ground in a well-ventilated natural surroundings. Road temperature or ground temperature is actually at the surface. So it's out beyond the atmosphere, right at the surface of the ground.
And what kind of tools are used or utilized to measure road temperature?
There are basically 2 ways. One way would be to put some kind of sensing device, a probe, in the surface, just below the surface. And the other way would be to use infrared radiation. So you'd mount a sensor on a pole, and that infrared wavelength measurement would give you a road temperature or surface temperature.
Now, you mentioned earlier in your testimony that road temperature in particular is important to your clients. Why is that?
And I've heard this so many times from our clients, you can forecast or expect 1 inch of snowfall or 3 inches of snowfall. If it's going to melt because the road temperature is 34 degrees or 35 degrees Fahrenheit, they don't really want to do anything. They don't want to put a lot of chemical down. They don't want to hire private contractors with plows. Whereas if it's going to accumulate, especially on the road surface, they need to be prepared. And there's so much demand now on having black pavements during winter storm events. There's so many automobiles on the roadways in this area that each of these municipalities is constantly under demand to make sure they do the best job they can. And in order to do that, they need to know what the road temperature is going to be or the ground temperature is going to be in order to best have snow and ice operations to meet those demands.
Now, is there a difference, or what is the difference in the changes to air temperature as opposed to the change in road temperature?
They're different substances, so they have a different pattern of temperature change. Air temperature changes much more quickly. And of course, when we're talking about temperature, we're talking about energy, the way the molecules in the atmosphere are moving. The faster they're moving, the higher the temperature, the more energy. So depending on what is causing that change in temperature, the atmosphere is going to react more slowly. The ground will react more slowly to the change. The atmosphere will react pretty quickly and much faster.
Now, in your analysis here, what time frame again were you using, or were you measuring the temperature across?
I
Let me ask you
looked at
this way.
yeah,
You
go ahead.
started on January 26th through the 29th, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And why is it specifically with temperature that you started on the 26th as opposed to anything else?
I was asked to start at the 26th, and I said that that's a good way to go because it establishes a period of seasonal freezing ground. It typically happens in this climate in the midwinter that our ground freezes. So if you look a few days before, you get a good sense if that was the case. I mean, there have been winters, there have been months of January in recent years that we've reached 60, even 70 degrees, and nothing is going to be frozen during that time. This was not the case in late January of 2022. It was an unusually cold period, and it was important to record that.
Now, can you describe to the jury or lay out for the jury the temperature readings throughout that period of time that you analyzed?
Yes. I'll start with the 26th and just go without going through more than just the day high and low. A high of 28, a low of 12. On the 27th, the high was 27 and the low was just 9 degrees Fahrenheit. On the 28th, Friday, the high temperature reached 36 and the low was 22. And then on Saturday, the 29th, the high temperature was 29 and the low was down to 15.
Now, sir, if I could ask you specifically within that time period, a specific time period of approximately 1:30 a.m. on the 29th through 5 a.m. on the 29th, what does the data demonstrate with respect to the air temperature during that period?
From 1:30 to 5:30?
Yes, please.
On the 29th. All right, I'll consult this data from Norwood Airport if that's the way we should look at this. I would suggest to do that. And at 1:30, the temperature was 31. By 5:53 in the morning, it was down to 24 degrees.
During that time period, before that, is the temperature relatively stagnant during that time period of 1:30 to 5 a.m.?
Before that time?
During that time.
Oh, during the early part of the time. And again, this is right at Norwood Airport. It might have been a little bit colder in Canton. It certainly was colder at the Blue Hill Observatory, but I don't have a lot of that, so I'm using this.
Sure.
So based on this, it was pretty steady through around 2 in the morning. And then because of the nature of this type of storm, it's deepening rapidly. It's low pressure offshore. So the wind tends to back from the northeast to the north-northeast to the north. And that backing wind starts to draw air rather than from the Gulf of Maine, the Atlantic Ocean, the harbor, more from northern New England and Quebec. So that's a tendency of all of these winter storms to tend to get colder as the storm intensifies. And that's what we see starting to happen as you get toward 2:30 in the morning, and especially 4:30, it's down to 28, 26, and then down to 24 degrees just before 6 in the morning.
And that temperature sort of fluctuation or lack thereof, is that consistent with what you would expect in this type of storm?
It's exactly what I would expect. And this is a classic winter nor'easter, and that temperature drop is part of that.
And lastly, sir, if I could just take you back to the road temperature you were talking about before. How would you describe the temperature readings generally from the 26th through the 29th as far as what type of temperatures were recorded during that time frame that you just testified about?
As I said, it's the coldest time of the year anyway, in late January here in the Boston area around Canton, midwinter. And this particular year, 2022, it was colder than normal. So road temperatures were dropping much of the time. They may have come up a little bit during the course of the day, thanks to sunshine during the 26th and 27th. A little moderation in the temperature on the 28th, but for the most part, there was a frost in the ground, the soil was frozen, and the temperature was unusually cold at the middle of winter.
And what impact would that have on the hardness of the ground over that time period?
Well, again, the ground was frozen, the soil was frozen, and the surface of the ground was frozen. And it would have made the ground impenetrable, that hard, you know, as hard as too difficult. You wouldn't be able to dig in the ground.
Thank you very much, sir. I have nothing further on.
All right, Mr. Alessi.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Show Mr. Lally, please.
With regard to Mr. Lally and myself, we have agreed I'd like to address the court with a stipulation, and with regard to the document we stipulated into evidence, to execute measures.
Yes, Your Honor, may we approach this very briefly?
Okay.
Oh, I just made it back. Is that a sidebar? Is that number 5? Because I could not hear. I could not hear when I was coming back from letting the dog out the backyard what exactly they said. I do believe it's number 5 for the sidebars. I was listening to him tell us how frozen the ground was. It's too early for lunch, right? So that's number 5. Side of the bar. Thank you, Liam. Okay, let me bring our fan back up. Yep. I had removed my picture so you could see the slides he was doing better. And then I ran to let the dog, he's on an early, wanted to go out earlier than usual. That was a short sidebar. Here we go.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Gilman, and congratulations on your career up to this point.
Thank you. Good
I had
afternoon,
some-
almost.
Pardon me?
Good afternoon, almost.
I have some questions for you, if I could, please.
Uh-oh.
You covered a bunch of topics on your direct examination, and I wanted to confirm some of them. As a meteorologist, you indicated that you look at a variety of areas under the larger umbrella of weather, correct?
Correct.
And one of those areas is snow accumulation.
Correct.
Another area is visibility, correct?
Correct.
Do you have a general understanding about what this case is about? Let me ask it this way. As regards weather conditions, are you familiar with an address of 34 Fairview Road in Canton, New York?
Yes.
And have you ever been to 34 Fairview, Canton, New York?
Not New York. This is we're in Massachusetts.
I'm sorry, Massachusetts, sir.
Yes. I've been in many parts of Canton. I don't believe I've ever been to 34 Fairview.
Are you generally familiar with that area?
Yes.
And you've mentioned the Norwood Airport on your direct testimony, correct?
Yes.
And is the general area of Fairview, is that in close proximity to the Norwood Airport?
I mentioned it's a mile away.
Right, so it's fairly close, right?
A mile.
Right, so you would expect that the readings you talked about on your direct examination would have a direct bearing and relevance to the 34 Fairview Road in Canton, is that correct?
Yes. Relevance. Yes.
Yes. So what I would like to do is to draw your attention to the exhibit that was just marked, if Your Honor. We have that. May I approach, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Gilman, this is Exhibit 64. If I could hand that to you, please.
Thank you.
And you can keep that in front of you. If you could publish. Excuse me, Your Honor, may I publish?
Yes.
Thank you. If you could enlarge, just, no, not the whole thing, just the chart up above, and make that as large as you could for the jury, please. That is very good. Thank you. You see where we are. And Mr. Goodman, you can either look on the screen or look on the document, whichever is best for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's start with the top, which is estimated hourly snowfall ending at. This is for January 29th, 2022, correct?
Yes.
And what does not appear on this chart, but I want to make sure I can get this as accurate as possible, would it be appropriate to, before 1 a.m., to add a 0.2 for what you mentioned on direct for midnight? You mentioned there was a little bit starting and there was a 0.2. Is that correct? Did I hear that correct?
If you want to get the total for the snowfall event, yes.
Okay, so we'll just have, if you will, an imaginary 0.2 up at the top. And what I'm going to do, sir, is I'm going to go through the hourly snowfall, because there are times that you have on your chart that are relevant in this matter. So let's start with, and just do it chronologically by time. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to do a little bit of math as we go through. If you need a calculator, I think it's going to be fairly straightforward math for someone with your skills, but take your time when we get through it. So we start at midnight, and you mentioned the concept of visibility on your direct examination, correct?
Yes.
And I believe you said on your direct examination that at midnight, there was, quote, very little snow precipitation. Is that correct?
I believe I said there was very little snow on the ground.
Very little snow on the ground. And I think you used the phrase track a cat.
Enough to track a cat, exactly.
Right. And so enough to track a cat, but a fairly small amount, correct?
I don't know how to define it any better than enough to track a cat.
Very
That's-
good, sir. I'll
that's-
go with track a
Yeah.
cat.
That's the smallest amount as you can get. And again, that would be on a natural surface, not necessarily on pavement.
Right. And what would the variation be, if at all, on pavement?
Oh, a lot of factors would come into play. Most importantly, since this was a forecasted storm event, the town may have pre-treated the road. That lowers the freezing point of the precipitation. So it would, even if it was 25 degrees, it might be melting on the road.
So in terms of the factor you just talked about, for example, pre-treatment, that could cause the accumulation, the numbers here to be lower than what we're seeing on the chart, correct?
Definitely, correct.
But there's not a scenario where it could be higher, is it, at this point?
Well, there are places, especially with this kind of wind and dry, fluffy snow, that you would have drifting.
Right, but with just 0.2 inches on the ground, would you expect drifting?
No,
Okay.
absolutely not. Not
Right,
unless I was a very small animal.
I was going to say, tracking a cat wouldn't
Yeah.
seem to work very well if you've only
No.
got a drifting with 0.2.
I thought you were asking about the larger numbers.
No, sir, good point. What I'd like to do is to just concentrate on the beginning here and midnight and 1 a.m., and then we'll progress down through, okay? I
Okay.
want to snapshot it, if you will, starting at the very beginning. So we then move to 1 a.m., which is 0.3 inches, correct?
Correct.
Now, if you add, and it seems like to be most accurate, to each number here, we would add a 0.2 to get the total, correct?
Correct.
So if we go to 1 a.m. on January 29, 2022, we've only got 0.5 inches of snow per this chart, correct?
Total so far, yes.
And that could, on the road, that could be less because of municipal pre-treatment. If they pre-treated for the storm, they could have put some chemicals down that would have caused a melt and therefore less. That's a possibility.
That's one factor. Another factor would just be the road may be warmer for a number of reasons.
So that could be another reason why it might be less, another factor.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now let's go to, I want to go between 1 and 2 a.m. Let's assume a time of 1:45 a.m. on January 29, 2022. Is it correct that the accumulation would be less than 0.8 inches at that point, according to your chart?
By 2 a.m., it would be less than 0.8, yes.
Therefore, correct.
Therefore, by 1:45, it would be less than 0.8, yes.
Right, so-
Or equal to, if yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you,
Less
sir.
than or equal to.
Right, so you used 2 a.m., right, which would mean that it was 0.8, correct?
Correct.
And then if you work back 15 minutes at 1:45 a.m., it would be less than 0.8, correct?
If it was still snowing in those 15 minutes.
Right.
yes.
So, but I just want to focus on the number.
Yeah.
At 1:45 a.m., it's less than 0.8 inches, correct?
It's less than 0.8 inches.
Yes,
Okay.
right. Alrighty. So, and that is, to state it another way, is it correct to say it's just 0.8 of an inch? Is that correct?
0.8 is 0.8 of an inch. yes.
Right. Another way to say it. So in terms of the time now, and this may get a little more complicated, sir, but if you take just the time between 1 a.m. and 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. So you've got 0.8. You would have under at 1:45, is it correct you would have only 0.35 inches accumulated of the 0.8? You follow my math, sir?
I'm not sure what I follow in that sentence. Did you ask me how much snow fell between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m.?
That's another way of asking the
Okay,
question.
between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m., 0.3 of an inch is the estimated snowfall.
Right, very well. And so what I'd like to do now is to move down the chart to 3 a.m. How much snow has fallen or accumulated between 12 a.m. and 3 a.m.?
It would be 1 inch.
Right, and is an inch, and you're in the measurement business, about the size of a thumbnail?
Yeah, I actually use the knuckle on my thumb to the end of my thumb as an inch.
Right, so from the knuckle of one's thumb to the end of the thumb is 1 inch. Right. And under your terminology on direct, you had used the term very little. Would you consider from the knuckle to the top of the thumb very little snow?
It definitely would require a comparison. 1 inch of snow has caused tremendous problems for people.
Right.
So I would not call it, just by the fact of 1 inch of snowfall, I would never say it's very little.
No, so I'm sorry, maybe my question wasn't clear. I'm not talking about effects of 1 inch. I'm just talking a measurement of 1 inch on a measurement scale. Would you still consider that your phrase, track a cat, or would you be out of the track a cat?
We'd be out of the track a
All right.
cat stage.
Got it. So, but again, the 1 inch being from the knuckle to the top of the thumb.
Yes.
Let's now go all the way down to about another time is 3:30 a.m., which we're going to focus on now, 3:30 a.m. How much snow had accumulated by 3:30 a.m.?
Well, we're going to have that inch we just talked about at length, and we're going to add the 2/10 from the previous day, the last few hours of the 28th. So we have 1.2. Now we're going to add another 1/2 an inch by 4 a.m. So somewhere less than 1.7 inches, less than or equal to.
Wouldn't the number at 3:30 be 0.85 inches?
You're including the snowfall from the previous day, the 2/10 of an inch?
Yes.
No.
What would it be?
As I said, there's 1.2 inches up to 3 a.m. And then we're adding some amount before 4 a.m. Unknown how that was distributed within that hour, but something like 1.7 equal or less than total.
How about the accumulation between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m.? How much accumulation for that time period?
Between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. So we have 0.3 of an inch up to 2 and another 0.4 of an inch, or a total of 0.7.
So between 1 and 3 a.m., there's only an accumulation of 0.7, correct?
Correct.
Inches.
Correct.
You had spoken a lot on your direct testimony about the magnitude of the storm, a variety of other measurements. But what I wanted to draw really a line at 6 a.m., which you said was an accumulation of 3.9. What I want to do is to now move on to from 7 a.m. on January 29th until noontime. And you can check my math, sir, but I get 12.5 inches total as of noon on January 29th.
I can do the arithmetic if it sounds about right. 8.6 inches fell up until noon, starting at 6 in that time period, which is about the amount we forecast. And did you ask about the total going back to the night before, or
Yeah, the total starting at midnight,
starting at midnight?
right, going until noon. So it's a 12-hour period
Mhm.
of the same day, January 29th.
My quick calculation is 12.3 inches.
Right, and then you'd add the 0.2 from midnight.
Previous to midnight. Yes.
Right, so 12.3 is what shows with all those numbers, but then you have to add the 0.2 from midnight, which would get you to 12.5, correct?
Exactly. Yep.
Good. So just to summarize the first column there, all the way down from 1 a.m. to 12 p.m. At 6 a.m., we've got 3.9 inches. And then moving down to 12 p.m., we're at 12.5 inches, correct?
I believe so.
Sir, tell me when you're
Yes. Yes.
So we're in alignment with those two numbers, 3.9 inches as of 6 a.m., 12.5 inches as of 12 p.m. on January 29th, correct?
Yes. Yeah. I'm sorry if I wasn't sure if you wanted me to do all the arithmetic again, but I did do that. And yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate you doing that. You talked about the concept of visibility on your direct examination. In terms of visibility, did I hear you correctly that there's a correlation between the amount of snow coming down and visibility?
The intensity of the snowfall. So the amount over time and visibility, right?
Right. So the intensity or amount over time, how would you describe visibility from 12 midnight or 12 a.m. on January 29th until 1 a.m., that 1 hour period? How would you describe visibility?
I really don't know exactly. I can look at the report from Norwood Airport. They measure the visibility.
Could you do that, sir? Would that be easy enough for you to do?
Do you need a light, Mr. Gilman? Do you need lights on?
If we're going to do more than one, I would, but let's see if I can. Thank you, Your Honor. And we were asked about 1 a.m. Is that?
Yes, visibility at 1 a.m.
Okay. Visibility reported at 1 a.m. was 1.2 miles in light snow.
And what does that mean, a visibility of 1.2 miles?
1.25 miles, 1.25 miles. It means that anything that was more than 1.25 miles away from the observer would be hidden by the snowfall. You wouldn't be able to see it.
And what does it mean if it were the visibility was less than 1.25 miles?
And as the visibility lowers, your ability to see objects in the distance is reduced.
So assume, sir, that somebody is 30 feet away from an object they want to see, and the visibility is 1.25 miles. Would they be able to see that object based upon your experience with visibility and your your career in that area?
All other things being equal, yes.
Right. So would it be fair to say visibility would be good from 30 feet if it's a 1.25 mile and beyond?
Can you answer that, Mr. Gilman?
Can I further explain to the jury about visibility? Thank you. A term like good for visibility would generally apply more toward 8 miles, 10 miles as good visibility. So it's hard to say that anything under 3 miles. For instance, we go from calling visibility reduction in haze to fog. Once it's really the same atmospheric phenomenon, but once you get below 3 miles, we call it fog or dense fog. So anything below that, when you reduce visibility by fog, haze, snow below 3 miles, it's hard to call it good visibility.
But if something is at 1.25 miles, there's visibility, correct?
Of 1.25 miles, yes.
There is.
And again, if I could explain for the jury, a lot of this is developed for aviation.
Right.
And if you're a pilot or you think about what a pilot needs to go through, that's where these terms come from.
I understand, sir, but you are in the weather forecasting business, correct?
I sure am, yes.
And you and weathercasters, we all here on TV talk about visibility on their forecast, correct?
Correct.
And they're not talking just to pilots, right? They're talking to people who are going to drive, people who are going to walk. Is that correct?
And it is a challenge to communicate that, yes.
But sir, my question is, when someone, a weathercaster, a weather person is talking about visibility, the main target audience are for people who are going to be driving or walking, correct? There's not pilots that they're giving.
Well, I don't know, but I would never expect, and I do broadcast meteorology, a broadcast meteorologist to say visibility was good if it was less than 1.5 miles.
Yeah, sir, I appreciate that, but my question's not, I've left whether it's good or not. I'm talking about the purpose of weathercasters speaking about visibility.
Yes.
You had indicated in your earlier answer, you had tethered it to pilots, but there's also an application of the visibility concept for the rest of us in the world who drive and walk, correct?
Yes,
Isn't it useful for that?
Absolutely. I'm trying to answer your question about whether the visibility was good.
Right, but but I'm not asking that question anymore. My
Okay.
question is just,
I only know what you asked me.
All right. I'll try it a different way. Visibility is a concept that is used by weathercasters to assist people who are going to be walking or driving. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. So now let's go on to the concept of temperature. You mentioned the concept of wind chill on your direct examination. You recall that, sir?
I was asked about it, yes.
Yes. Does wind chill have a relationship to temperature? And if so, what is it?
It does have a relationship to temperature. It's a complex function that was developed by the U.S. Air Force in the 50s to help produce cold weather gear. And it was determined that wind had a major impact on our military in terms of what type of gear they needed, in addition to how low the temperature was. So it's a measurement of temperature to begin with, and then there's a complex function applied based on the wind speed to come up with how that air temperature, how that air is going to impact the human body.
So is it fair to say that if you have a temperature, and what I wanted to do is to go to the temperatures that you gave on your direct examination, is it accurate to state that, for example, on January 29th, I believe I heard you say there was a high of 29 and a low of 15. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, that was my report based on all those 3 locations, yes.
And you had also testified about wind speed and wind gusts as well. And can you state, if you have it in your notes?
I do, yes. It was
wind
in the
speed?
report, yep.
Yep. And what was the wind speed?
The-
Average and then high gusts.
Sure. 23 miles an hour with frequent gusts of 47 miles an hour.
So what does your number 23, how does that affect temperatures of 29 and 15?
it makes that air feel much colder. So that air, that 20-degree air, did you say 20 and
29, sir, and 15 were
Okay.
the numbers you had given?
that range for that day? Sure.
Yeah.
So it makes that air temperature feel colder, and it allows that air to take heat out of your body more efficiently and more rapidly. So it feels much colder. And we can calculate roughly how it would feel if there was no wind at all.
And sir, thank you. You've gotten right to my next point, and I only have a few more questions left for you. So if you have the highest temperature on the 29th of 29, January 29, 2022, do you know what the wind chill factor would do in terms of a calculation number to bring that 29 number down? Do you know what that number would result in applying the most conservative wind speed of 23?
I wasn't asked to calculate that, no?
Would it be less than 0? Just an estimate,
Based on the 29 temperature?
based on the 29.
No,
Would it
I
be
don't
in-
believe so.
Would it be in the teens?
Yes.
So the 29 would be in the teens. And then for the low of 15, approximately what number might that get down to?
Again, depending on the wind, if you looked at 5 miles an hour, again, it wasn't that wind all day, and that 15-degree might not have been corresponding to any wind at all.
Just using your average that you used on direct of 23.
The average wind, again, made it feel much colder, bitterly cold, extremely cold when you were out in the highest wind at the lowest temperature. So it may have felt like 0 to even 10 below 0 at the lowest temperature and the highest wind gusts.
So if I got that correct, so 15 was the lowest temperature you gave in direct on January 29th, and you state that it would be, with the wind chill using about an average of 23, would be 0 or maybe minus 10. Is that the number correct?
Again, I'm just guessing. I didn't do the calculation. I wasn't asked to do the
Fair enough.
calculation. But based on my experience of reporting in this area for 45 years, I basically get the idea of what it's like when the temperature is that low and the wind is that high. Yeah.
Right, and if we could please have the chart published back up, please. You can keep the lights on, you just make it larger. I want to make sure Mr. Gilman has some facile with his notes. Okay, so is it correct to say that if the total accumulation for the storm was 23.8 inches, that the vast majority of that accumulation came well after 6 a.m.?
Yes.
And as of 6 a.m., we've only got 3.9 inches compared to what the storm ended up at about 23.8. And then importantly, from midnight on January 29th until 3 a.m., we've got just 1.2 inches, correct?
Exactly.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Please bear with me a moment, Mr. Gilman. Thank you for answering my questions, Mr. Gilman.
You're welcome.
Anything else, Mr. Lally? Okay.
Mr. Gilman, you were asked about the snowfall between 12 a.m. and 1 a.m. How much snow again was there during that time frame?
During that time frame, about 0.3 of an inch.
And During that time frame was probably the least amount of snow that was on the ground during the course of the storm, correct?
During that hour or two previous, yeah, there was really, in fact, I have this chart I showed, the graph, the map. It just showed a trace of zero. There was less than an inch on the ground. And we measure snow on the ground in whole numbers, so it would either be 1 inch or zero.
And so that would be during what you've characterized as the track a cat stage, correct?
Yes.
And so it's during that track a cat stage that there's the least amount of snow between the frozen ground and anything that may come down on top of it, correct?
Yes.
Now, quickly as it applies to visibility. When you were asked about visibility in 30 feet, you said all other things being equal. What are some of the things that would make it unequal?
A car in front of you, a building in front of you, a person, anything other than weather. And there are other types of weather that can lower the visibility besides snowfall, including fog.
So darkness, as far as nightfall versus daytime, that would have a negative impact on your visibility?
Sustained.
What about lighting? How would lighting impact the visibility of an object?
I really can't say that. Lighting, obviously, you need some light to see anything. That's really all I could say.
And lastly, sir, as far as wind chill is concerned, again, could you explain to the jury exactly what is wind chill? What is it measuring?
Again, it was developed for the military in the 50s to help design. It was actually done here at the Natick Labs here in Massachusetts to help design cold weather gear, because prior to that time, during World War II, the Korean War, unfortunately, especially Air Force aviators were suffering. They had clothing that might have been adequate for the temperature, but because of the wind, they suffered frostbite and other ill effects. And so research was done, and the result of that was a wind chill temperature, the way it would feel to the human body based on the wind on a certain temperature.
And so the wind chill is measuring the impact of how a person experiences the air temperature, correct?
Exactly.
I have nothing further. Thank you, sir.
Anything, Mr. Alessi?
No further questions, Your
All
Honor.
right, Mr. Gilman, you are all set, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Do you have any that marked exhibits or identification?
I have relinquished them to this nice young lady.
Thank you. So, fine. Next witness.
Thank you. The Commonwealth recalls Nick Guarino.
Okay,
Your Honor, I'll inform this will be the last recall for Mr. Guarino.
thank you.
Solemn swear the evidence you give in the court and jury the case on against the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Again, if you need to stand it in.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Last time you appeared, there were a number of extraction reports that we introduced into evidence. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
And just remind us briefly what an extraction report is?
It's the information from the cell phones that I pull up via cell bar.
All right, so I'm just going to ask that this witness identify himself.
My apologies, Your Honor. Could you please again introduce yourself to the jury, spell your last name for the record?
I'm Trooper Nicholas Guarino, Guarino.
You would explain what an extraction report is.
Yes, it's the information in the cell phones. We can create PDFs or portable cases from information, whatever is specified.
An extraction report, can it be general or more narrow?
Yes, it can be.
introduce a few more extraction reports that we didn't get to last time.
Okay.
In this case, did you use Mr. O'Keefe's phone to create an extraction report that included all of his calls from the 28th and the 29th of January 2022?
Yes, I did.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
And your document, do you recognize that document?
Yes, I do.
And what is it?
It's John O'Keefe's call logs from everyone from the 29th to the 28th. Right.
I move this into evidence, please.
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you.
65?
Did you create an extraction report that included a text message between the defendant and Jennifer McCabe?
Yes, I did.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
And your document, do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell us what that is?
Yes, it's the text chain from the defendant to Jen McCabe.
I move this into evidence, please.
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you.
66?
One moment. Thank you. With the court's permission, could Mr. Guarino read this to the jury?
Okay.
Could you kindly read that and explain it to the jury?
With all the information on it.
Yes.
This is from the defendant to Jen McCabe, 7:26:52 a.m. on the 29th. It says, can you send me Carrie's number?
Thank you. Did you further create an extract?
Yes.
Can you review that again?
Yes.
And do you see who that's from? And who it's to?
I'm sorry, it's from Jen McCabe to the defendant.
And what does it say?
Can you send me Carrie's number?
What time and date?
That is 7:26:52 a.m. on April 29th, 2022.
Thank you. Did you do a further extraction report from John O'Keefe's phone with text messages between him and a person named Kaylee?
Yes, I did.
May I approach?
Yes.
You recognize that?
Yes.
What is it?
It's the text chain between John O'Keefe and Kaylee.
The date?
It goes, sorry, it's kind of faded. January 28th, 2022 to January 29th, 2022.
Thank you. I move this into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you.
67?
Okay, Trooper Guarino, we're done with extraction reports.
Okay.
Did you have an opportunity to obtain phone messages, phone calls, and text messages between the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe?
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Trooper Guarino, did you have an opportunity to obtain phone calls, voice messages, and text messages from the defendant to Mr. O'Keefe's phone on the evening of January 29th, 2022?
Yes, I was.
Where did you get the phone call records from?
From John O'Keefe's phone.
Where did you get the voicemails from?
Also from John O'Keefe's phone.
Where did you get the text messages from?
From John O'Keefe's phone.
Did you have an opportunity to take those phone calls, the voice messages, and the text messages and put them in a chronological order?
Yes, I did.
Did you include all of the phone calls, all the text messages, and all of the voicemails?
Between John O'Keefe and the defendant, yes.
Did you create a PowerPoint to put them in a chronological order?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes. Show Mr. Alessi.
Sorry. Showing you a binder, sir. Could you open it up? Tell us what this is.
Yes, this is the phone calls and text messages between the defendant and John O'Keefe, as well as the voicemails. Well,
Is there a package in the front of that binder?
yes, there is.
And what is that package?
It says defendant's voicemails and on 1/29/2022. The USB thumb drive that should have those files on.
Your Honor, I move this binder as the next exhibit. It would include both a PowerPoint presentation as well as a clip of the phone calls.
No objection, Your Honor.
Should, yes. Do you need the thumb drives?
I don't.
Okay.
Mark this, please.
Exhibit 68. Thank you.
Thank you.
With the court's permission, I would ask that Trooper Guarino take us through the PowerPoint presentation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is it okay to begin? Okay.
Please.
So these are the phone calls on the 29th. So at 12:35 a.m., the defendant calls John. That phone call is not answered. 12:34:09 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:34:38 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:35:09 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 12:35:35, the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:36:09 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered.
Trooper Guarino, let me stop you there for a second.
Mhm.
Did you look into any internet connection between the defendant's phone and the router and the internet connection at Meadows Ave, John O'Keefe's home that night?
Yes, at 12:36:39 a.m., the defendant's phone auto connects to the Wi-Fi HATSFAM 123.
Are you familiar with the router at Mr. O'Keefe's home?
I have not done a look at it in person, but that's the known network that's listed under it. There's two, HATSFAM 123 and O'Keefe 74.
Did
Two
you
names
learn
listed.
the range that a connection must be in order to connect to his router?
Yes, so depending on the router, it's either a 2.4 gigahertz or a 5 gigahertz radio band or signal band, I should say. Depending on which one it's connecting to, which band, it's either 150-foot indoor range or up to 300 feet outdoor. So again, when you pull into your home, sometimes you can still be connected to your home Wi-Fi in the driveway.
And again, can you give us the time of the connection between the defendant's phone and Mr. O'Keefe's router at Meadows Ave that night?
Yes, 12:36:39 a.m.
Please continue.
At 12:36:40 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. At 12:37:08 a.m., the defendant calls John, and voicemail number 1 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman, would you kindly play the voicemail for 12:37:08?
At 12:38:26 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:39:03 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:39:37 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:40:43 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. At 12:41:35 a.m., the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 2 is left. Some beeping noises, appears to be a butt dial or accidental call.
Ms. Gilman, could you play the voice message at 12:41:35?
The defendant then texts John O'Keefe at 12:55:31 a.m. on the 29th. I'm going home. The defendant texts John O'Keefe, sorry, see you later at 12:55:50 a.m. on the 29th. At 12:58:19 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:58:47 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 12:59:24 a.m., the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 3 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman?
John, I'm here with your fucking kids. Nobody knows what the fuck you are, you fucking pervert.
At 1 a.m. 26 seconds, the defendant calls John. It's not answered. At 1 a.m. 49 seconds, the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 4 is left. It's 1 second called, no sound.
Ms. Gilman?
That was it. The defendant texts John O'Keefe, your kids are cucking alone at 1:02 a.m. on the 29th. Defendant texts John O'Keefe, I'm back in Mansfield. The kids are home alone. 1:04:14 a.m. on the 29th. At 1:10:17 a.m., the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 5 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman?
Yeah, it's 1 in the morning. I'm with your fucking niece and nephew. You fucking pervert. You're a fucking pervert.
At 1:10:44 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. At 1:12:18 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 1:12:46 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 1:13:13 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. Sorry. At 1:14:11 a.m., the defendant calls John. It's not answered. 1:14:44 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 1:16:10 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. 1:16:38 a.m., the defendant calls John. Not answered. At 1:17:37 a.m., the defendant calls John. So when voicemail 6 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman?
John, I'm going home. I cannot babysit in these. I need to go home. You are fucking using me right now. You're fucking another girl. Kim's sleeping next to me. You're a fucking loser. Fuck yourself.
At 1:18:38 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. At 4:38:14 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 4:38:49 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 4:39:39 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 4:40:05 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 4:42:05 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 4:42:54 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 4:45:10 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:04:27 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:21:28 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:21:58 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:23:26 a.m., the defendant calls John. Voicemail number 7 is left with voice.
Ms. Gilman?
John, I swear to God, you.
At 5:24:27 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:25:28 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:26:14 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:28:16 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:28:43 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:29:21 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:29:46 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:30:15 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:30:52 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:31:21 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 5:36:29 a.m., the defendant calls John, not answered. 6:03:02 a.m., the defendant calls John, and voicemail number 8 is left with some voice and noise and background.
Ms. Gilman, could you play that, please?
Yes, I need someone to be 34 beautiful, Vietnam, with a anti notice no. Yeah. Okay, I know. Where's the blankets? I don't see blankets, Harry. Yes, I need something.
We have the lights on, please. I have no further questions.
All right. Mr. Alessi, does this seem like a good time to take the luncheon recess?
Does, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, so folks, we will take a 45-minute luncheon recess.
Court, all rise, please. Jurors, close your notebooks and follow me.
Goodbye.
Oh my. Like that was I'm sure the jury really appreciated hearing that, especially after hearing earlier that in the cross-examination of Katie MacLaughlin, Alan Jackson went out of his way to try to say that it was actually possibly Jen McCabe that was the hysterical one and everybody else. But that little butt dial recording kind of like, well, that was definitely Karen Reed screaming their names, carrying on. That was interesting. Oh, and yes, Liam, kind of puts a little damper on the sure it was a butt dial that the defense keeps saying. Like, butt dials happen. Plenty of butt dials happen. Damn. I will say plenty of calls happened. But I'm really interested in the what sounds like. John, is that you? That was the 17 minutes that are not accounted for between her being at Meadows, John's house, and arriving with either at Jen McCabe's or at Carrie's. 17 minutes. And it is speculated, I'm still waiting to hear the actual evidence of tower location and GPS or the Lexus telling us. It is speculated that she did drive by 34 Fairview on her way. And that's how, when they got there, towards there, she knew exactly where John lay. Because both Carrie and Jen McCabe, Carrie Roberts and Jen McCabe, both thought it was pretty odd that she could see but they couldn't. And she jumped out and ran straight to it. Both of them testified to that. If butt dials can be damning, I am glad my phone screen is protected when in my pocket. Exactly. Locking phones are a blessing. Yep. Perfect timing for the prosecution. The jury gets the process all out without the defense muddying the water. Yes, but buckle up, buttercups, because man, are we in for an afternoon. So she did say only 45 minutes. So I will be back before they're back, but I'm going to, do justice by my pup and get him all settled and get some more coffee going and take a good break myself. All of you get a good stretch in, and I hope to see some of you back here to keep me company in the afternoon. And I anticipate, well, would you like to lay wedges? It does seem like Robert Alessi will be doing the cross, since that's who she asked. Oh, which means it could be very drawn out. Yeah, by the milliseconds. But on that, let me get you the link to the next stream. Hold on. And then, well, I look forward to seeing you all there. Oh, and just a heads up, I'm going to be streaming later tonight again too, with a regular true crime and legal update that we do on Tuesdays. there's a few things we need to discuss that are not involving Karen Reed. Okay. There we go. There's the next stream link. I hope to see some of you there. Enjoy your break for lunch, 45 minutes, and we'll be back shortly.